The moment Princess Xena enters the private bath chamber, human guard Anthony Robertson knows his assignment has taken an unexpected turn. His eyes widen as the Vidian royal, resplendent in her alien beauty, approaches him with unmistakable intent. This was not part of the protocol he'd been briefed on when assigned to guard duty on the Vidian royal starship. "You seem surprised, Anthony," Princess Xena purrs, her iridescent scales shimmering under the soft light. "Did you think I chose you merely for your combat skills?" Anthony's mind races. The human-Vidian alliance is still fragile, tensions simmering beneath the surface of diplomatic niceties. As a decorated veteran of Earth's military, he knows the importance of maintaining professional boundaries, but the princess's gaze holds him captive, her alien eyes promising far more than political alliances. "Your Highness," Anthony starts, his voice steady despite his racing pulse. "I'm honored, but my duty—" "Your duty," Xena interrupts, closing the distance between them, "is to serve the royal family, and I have a very specific service in mind." The bath chamber suddenly feels too small, too intimate. Steam rises from the ornate pool, carrying exotic scents that cloud Anthony's senses. He takes a step back, his training warring with the primal pull of the alien princess. "I don't understand," he manages, though part of him is beginning to grasp the situation all too clearly. Xena's laugh is like crystal chimes. "It's simple, my dear human. Vidian royalty must choose mates from other species. It maintains our genetic diversity, strengthens our bloodlines, and you, Anthony Robertson, have caught my eye." The revelation hits Anthony like a plasma blast. He opens his mouth to protest, to cite regulations and protocols, but Xena's royal authority cuts through his objections like a laser through Durasteel. "I order you to join me in the bath, guardsman," she commands, her tone brooking no argument. Anthony hesitates for a heartbeat, then another. His training screams at him to maintain his post, to uphold the delicate balance between their species. But Xena's order is clear, and he's sworn to obey the Vidian royal family as part of the alliance. With reluctant steps, he approaches the bath. Just as he's about to enter the water, alarms blare throughout the ship. The deck beneath them bucks violently, throwing both human and Vidian into the pool with a tremendous splash. "We're under attack," Anthony shouts, his military instincts kicking in as he surfaces. He grabs Xena, pulling her close to shield her from falling debris. Through the cacophony of alarms and distant explosions, a ship-wide announcement crackles. "Alert! Kzinti warships detected! All personnel to battle stations!" The Kzinti, a rival alien faction known for their aggression and expansionist policies. Their surprise attack could shatter the fragile human-Vidian alliance. As Anthony tries to guide Xena to the chamber's exit, the doors slam shut with a final-sounding thud. Emergency protocols have sealed them in, transforming their intimate rendezvous into an impromptu panic room. "We're trapped," Xena says, a note of fear creeping into her usually confident voice. Anthony's mind shifts into tactical mode. He scans the chamber, noting its location deep within the ship's core. "This might be the safest place on the vessel," he realizes aloud. "The Kzinti would have to tear through multiple decks to reach us here." As the ship shudders under another barrage, Anthony finds himself holding the alien princess close. The political implications of their current situation race through his mind. A human soldier in an intimate embrace with Vidian royalty, all while their alliance hangs in the balance of an interstellar battle. "What do we do now?" Xena asks, her earlier seductive confidence replaced by the pragmatism of a leader facing a crisis. Anthony meets her gaze, his resolve hardening. "Now, Your Highness, we survive. And when we get out of here, we make sure this attack doesn't destroy everything our people have worked for." As the battle rages beyond their sealed sanctuary, human and Vidian find themselves united by more than political necessity. In the crucible of conflict, the seeds of a deeper understanding, and perhaps something more, begin to take root. The ship lurched again, nearly toppling Anthony and Xena as they clung to each other in the turbulent water. Another explosion rocked the vessel, closer this time, and the lights flickered ominously. "We need to move," Anthony said, his military instincts kicking into high gear. He scanned the room quickly, searching for anything that could aid their survival. His eyes landed on a subtle irregularity near the bath's edge. There, he pointed, guiding the princess through the choppy water. I think I see a hidden panel. Together they reached the bath's rim, and Anthony ran his fingers along the seamless wall until he felt a slight give. With a firm push, a section of the wall slid away, revealing a cache of emergency supplies. Vidian emergency protocols, Xena explained, her eyes widening at the sight. Every royal chamber has one, but I've never actually seen inside. Anthony's hands moved swiftly, assessing the contents. He found an advanced communication device and several weapons of unmistakably Vidian design. Your Highness, can you operate these? He asked, hefting one of the sleek alien guns. To his surprise, Xena nodded confidently. All Vidian royalty undergo combat training. It's a tradition dating back centuries. She took the weapon from him, her fingers moving deftly over its controls. As Anthony familiarized himself with the alien technology, Xena activated the communication device. Static crackled before a voice cut through, speaking in the complex clicks and whistles of the Vidian language. It's Captain Krell, Xena translated for Anthony. The Kzinti have boarded the ship. They're making their way towards the royal quarters. Anthony's lips pursed. They're after you. Xena nodded grimly. The Kzinti have long sought to destabilize our alliance with humanity. Capturing or killing me would be a significant blow. As they spoke, the violent rocking of the ship intensified. Water sloshed over the bath's edges, making it increasingly difficult to maintain their footing. We need to drain this, Anthony said, looking for the controls. We can't defend ourselves if we're swimming. Working together, they quickly located the drainage system. As the water level dropped, Anthony became acutely aware of their state of undress. He pushed the thought aside, focusing on the task at hand. Your Highness, he began, then paused. Xena, I need to know. Earlier, when you approached me, was that part of your royal duties too? Xena met his gaze, her alien eyes unreadable. Partially, she admitted. I needed to gauge how trustworthy humans truly are. But I also chose you specifically, Anthony. Your records show a man of integrity and skill. Before Anthony could respond, Captain Krell's voice came through the communicator again. Xena listened intently, her expression growing more serious with each passing moment. The Kzinti are getting closer, she relayed to Anthony. Krell says we need to hold our position here. The bath chamber's location deep within the ship makes it one of the most defensible areas. Anthony nodded, his mind already formulating strategies. We'll need to barricade the entrance, he said, eyeing the ornate furniture around the room, and set up a defensive position with clear lines of fire. As they worked to fortify their position, Anthony couldn't help but be impressed by Xena's efficiency and calm under pressure. The princess moved with purpose, her earlier seductive demeanor replaced by the focus of a trained warrior. They had just finished positioning themselves near the chamber's entrance when a loud bang echoed from the other side of the door. The metal began to glow an angry red, the Kzinti cutting tools making quick work of the advanced alloy. Anthony and Xena exchanged a look, a silent understanding passing between them. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The door burst open in a shower of molten metal. A massive feline form filled the doorway, its fur overflowing with battle rage. Anthony didn't hesitate. He squeezed the trigger of his Vidian weapon, sending a burst of energy directly into the Kzinti warrior's chest. The alien stumbled backward, giving Xena the opening she needed. Her shot caught the Kzinti in the head, dropping it to the ground. But there was no time to celebrate. More Kzinti poured through the opening, their battle cries filling the chamber. Anthony and Xena found themselves in the fight of their lives, their backs literally against the wall as they fended off wave after wave of attackers. The close quarters worked to their advantage, funneling the Kzinti into a kill zone. Anthony's human combat training meshed surprisingly well with Xena's Vidian tactics. They moved in sync, covering each other's blind spots and taking turns to reload. In the chaos of the fight, Anthony noticed a Kzinti warrior attempting to flank their position. Without thinking, he threw himself in front of Xena, taking a glancing blow from the alien's energy weapon. The pain was immediate and intense, but he managed to stay on his feet. Xena's reaction was instantaneous. She fired over Anthony's shoulder, her shot catching the Xinti square in the chest. As the alien fell, she pulled Anthony back, her cool hand assessing his wound. "It's not deep," she said, relief evident in her voice. "But we need to end this quickly." Anthony nodded, gritting his teeth against the pain. They pressed their advantage, their combined firepower slowly but surely thinning the Kazini ranks. The bath chamber, once a place of luxury and relaxation, had become a battleground littered with fallen alien warriors. As the fight wore on, Anthony found himself hyper-aware of Xena's presence beside him. The heat of her body, the determined set of her jaw, the way her scales shimmered with each movement, it all combined to create a fierce, undeniable attraction that even the danger of their situation couldn't diminish. A lull in the fighting gave them a moment to catch their breath. Anthony turned to Xena, words of admiration on his lips, when a new sound caught their attention. Heavy footsteps approached from the corridor outside, accompanied by the distinct whine of powering energy weapons. Anthony and Xena raised their guns, ready for another wave of attackers, but the voice that called out was neither Kzinti nor Vidian. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Alliance vessel Intrepid," a woman's voice announced. "We're here to assist. Hold your fire." Anthony and Xena exchanged a look of surprise and relief. As human soldiers in full combat gear entered the chamber, Anthony realized that their ordeal was just the beginning. The battle for the ship, and perhaps the future of human-Vidian relations, was just beginning. The battle for the ship, and perhaps the future of human-Vidian relations, was just the beginning. As Commander Chen's troops secured the bath chamber, a deafening explosion rocked the entire vessel. The ceiling above Anthony and Xena groaned ominously, then gave way in a shower of debris and twisted metal. Anthony instinctively pulled Xena close, shielding her with his body as chunks of the ceiling crashed down around them. When the dust settled, Anthony found himself in near-total darkness, the princess's scales cool against his skin. He blinked, trying to orient himself in the gloom. "Xena, are you all right?" "I'm unharmed," she replied, her voice steady despite their predicament. "But I believe we're cut off from the others." Anthony's eyes adjusted to the dim emergency lighting. The falling debris had indeed separated them from both Commander Chen's forces and the remaining Xinti. He scanned their surroundings, years of military training kicking in as he assessed their options. That's when he spotted it, a small opening in the damaged wall, partially obscured by hanging cables and bent metal. "There," he whispered, pointing. "I think that's a maintenance shaft. It might be our way out of here." Xena followed his gaze, nodding in agreement. "We should move quickly. The Xinti will regroup soon." They scrambled to gather what they could, the Vidian weapons they'd used in the fight, and whatever scraps of clothing they could find to cover themselves. Anthony winced as he moved, the earlier injury from the Xinti weapon flaring with pain, but there was no time to dwell on it. He helped Xena into the narrow opening first, then followed close behind. The maintenance shaft was barely wide enough for them to crawl through, forcing them into an uncomfortably intimate position. Anthony could feel the heat radiating from Xena's body, smell the exotic scent of her skin. He pushed the distracting thoughts aside, focusing on the task at hand. "Watch for any structural damage," he advised as they moved forward. "The attack might have compromised the integrity of these passages." They inched their way through the darkness, the ship's inner workings humming and creaking around them. At times, the passage narrowed to the point where they had to squeeze through sideways, their bodies pressed tightly together. Anthony felt a jolt of electricity that had nothing to do with the ship's systems each time this happened. As they crawled, fragments of communication filtered through the ship's internal systems. Anthony strained to make sense of the garbled transmissions. "Multiple outposts under attack. Kzinti forces advancing on. Human-Vidian alliance in jeopardy." The gravity of the situation sank in. This wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a coordinated assault that threatened everything their peoples had worked for. Suddenly, the narrow passage opened into a larger junction area. Anthony emerged first, quickly scanning for threats before helping Xena out. As he grasped her hand to pull her up, they found themselves face to face with a group of startled Vidian crew members. Princess Xena, one of them exclaimed, eyes wide with shock at her state of undress. A tall, imposing Vidian stepped forward, his scarred face a mask of stern authority. I am Security Chief Zorn, he announced, his gaze flicking between Anthony and Xena. Explain yourselves. Anthony straightened, meeting the chief's eyes. Sir, I'm Guardsman Anthony Robertson. We were trapped in the royal bath chamber during the initial attack. We've been fighting our way out ever since. Xena stepped forward, her regal bearing evident despite her disheveled appearance. Chief Zorn, we need a status report immediately. What's the current situation? Zorn's expression softened slightly at the princess's command. The Xinti have taken control of several key areas, including the main bridge. We're organizing a counteroffensive from auxiliary control rooms throughout the ship. He paused, assessing Anthony with a critical eye. Your combat experience could be valuable, human. And your highness, your strategic knowledge would be most welcome. Zorn gestured to one of his subordinates, who hurried forward with 2 sets of Vidian combat suits. These should adapt to fit you both, he explained. As Anthony donned the alien armor, he couldn't help but marvel at its construction. The suit seemed to mold itself to his body, offering protection without sacrificing mobility. He glanced over at Xena and felt his breath catch in his throat. The Vidian combat suit accentuated her alien beauty, blending functionality with an elegance that seemed uniquely Vidian. Xena caught his appreciative look, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. For a moment, the chaos of their situation faded away, leaving only the electric connection between them. Zorn's gruff voice snapped them back to reality. We move out in 2 minutes. Our objective is to reach the nearest auxiliary control room and coordinate with the remaining loyal crew to retake the ship. As they prepared to leave, Anthony found himself falling naturally into step beside Xena. Their shared ordeal had forged a connection that transcended their different species. They moved in sync, communicating without words as they followed Zorn's team through the corridors. The sound of energy weapons and distant explosions grew louder as they approached their destination. Anthony's grip tightened on his Vidian weapon, adrenaline surging through his veins. Beside him, Xena's eyes narrowed with tenacity. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The fate of 2 worlds, and perhaps something even more personal, hung in the balance. Balance hung in the balance. Anthony took a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenges ahead. As they neared the auxiliary control room, the distant sounds of battle grew louder. Zorn held up a closed fist, signaling the group to halt. He peered around a corner, then quickly pulled back. Kzinti forces, he reported in a low voice. They've established a fortified position guarding the entrance. Energy shields and heavy weaponry. Anthony moved forward, assessing the situation. The corridor ahead opened into a wider area, where the Xinti had set up their defenses. He could see the shimmer of energy shields and the distinctive profiles of Xinti heavy weapons. We need a diversion, Anthony said, his mind racing through tactical options. He turned to Xena, an idea forming. Princess, if we flank their position while Chief Zorn's team provides covering fire, we might be able to catch them off guard. Xena's eyes met his, a mix of admiration and excitement in her gaze. A bold strategy, Anthony. I approve. Zorn nodded, impressed by the human's quick thinking. We'll draw their attention, but how do you plan to get around them? Anthony pointed to a nearby maintenance hatch. The tunnels we used earlier. They should run behind the Xinti position. With the plan set, Zorn and his team moved into position. Anthony and Xena slipped into the narrow maintenance tunnel, their bodies once again in close proximity. The princess's scales brushed against Anthony's skin, sending a shiver down his spine. He pushed the distracting thoughts aside, focusing on the task at hand. As they navigated the cramped passageway, the sounds of intense energy, weapon fire erupted from the corridor. Zorn's team had engaged the Xinti. This is our chance, Anthony whispered. They emerged behind the Xinti lines, catching sight of the feline warriors' backs as they focused on the frontal assault. Anthony and Xena shared a quick glance, then opened fire. Their coordinated attack sowed chaos among the Kzinti ranks. Anthony's human combat instincts meshed seamlessly with Xena's mastery of Vidian weaponry. They moved as one, each anticipating the other's actions without need for communication. In the heat of battle, a massive Xinti warrior charged toward Xena, catching her off guard. With a powerful swipe of its clawed hand, it knocked the princess's weapon from her grasp. Anthony didn't hesitate. He hurled himself between Xena and her attacker, engaging the Xinti in hand-to-hand combat. The feline warrior's strength was overwhelming, but Anthony's training kicked in. He dodged and weaved, using the Xinti's size against it. Still, the human was outmatched. Sharp claws raked across his chest, tearing through the Vidian combat suit. Anthony stumbled back, gasping in pain. Xena's eyes widened in alarm. She dove for her fallen weapon, snatched it up, and fired in one fluid motion. The Xinti warrior fell, its massive form crashing to the ground. For a moment, their eyes locked. Anthony saw gratitude and something deeper in Xena's gaze. There was no time to dwell on it, however. The battle raged on. With the Xinti's flank exposed, Zorn and his team pressed their advantage. Caught between two forces, the feline warriors began to fall back. Anthony and Xena pushed forward, their movements perfectly synchronized as they cleared a path to the auxiliary control room. Inside, they found a scene of organized chaos. Vidian crew members worked frantically at control panels, trying to regain command of the ship's systems. Anthony joined them, his strategic insights proving invaluable as they coordinated their efforts. As he worked, Anthony felt Xena's eyes on him. He glanced up, catching her watching him with a mix of respect and growing interest. The connection between them seemed to deepen with each passing moment. A Vidian technician's voice cut through the room. "We're detecting a new signal. A massive ship just decloaked nearby." Anthony rushed to the sensor display, his heart sinking as he saw the readings. A Xinti warship, dwarfing their already damaged vessel, loomed in space beside them. "They're charging weapons," the technician reported, panic evident in his voice. Anthony turned to Xena, their eyes meeting in a moment of shared commitment. They had repelled the boarders, but now faced an even greater threat. As alarms blared throughout the ship, Anthony knew their true test was just beginning. Anthony's mind raced, searching for a solution as the massive Xinti warship loomed ever closer. "We need to buy time," he said, turning to the Vidian technicians. "Can we vent plasma from the engine core?" The lead technician's eyes widened. "Yes, but why would we—" "A smokescreen," Anthony explained quickly. "It might confuse their sensors long enough for us to mount a defense." As the Vidians scrambled to implement his plan, Xena stepped closer to Anthony. Her voice was low, meant only for his ears. "There's something you should know." Anthony met her gaze, noting the intensity in her eyes. "My bloodline carries a unique genetic marker," she continued. "It allows me to interface directly with the ship's most advanced systems." Before Anthony could process this revelation, the ship shuddered violently. The Xinti warship had opened fire. "We're out of time," Xena said, her voice filled with perseverance. "Follow me." She led Anthony to a hidden panel near the auxiliary control room. As it slid open, he saw a small chamber containing what looked like a highly advanced neural interface system. "This system allows me to control multiple ship functions simultaneously," Xena explained, her fingers dancing over the activation sequence. "But the strain on my body and mind is immense." Anthony grabbed her arm, concern etched on his face. "Xena, you can't—" She placed a hand on his cheek, the gesture surprisingly tender amidst the chaos. "We have no choice, Anthony." Their eyes locked, volumes of unspoken emotion passing between them. The moment was shattered by another violent impact that rocked the ship. Xena quickly stepped into the chamber, connecting herself to the neural interface. Her body went rigid, a cry of pain escaping her lips as her mind linked with the ship's vast network. Anthony watched in awe as Xena's eyes began to glow with an otherworldly light. Streams of data flowed across her skin like luminous tattoos, pulsing in time with the ship's systems. Through their link, Xena activated the Vidian ship's remaining weapons. Energy beams lanced out, striking the Xinti warship with pinpoint accuracy. Defensive countermeasures sprang to life, creating an intricate web of protection around their vessel. The sudden assault caught the Xinti off guard. Their shields flickered under the barrage, sections of their hull erupting in flames. Anthony tore himself away from the mesmerizing sight of Xena controlling the ship. He reached Security Chief Zorn through the comm system. "Chief, now's our chance. We need to retake the ship while they're distracted." Together, Anthony and Zorn organized a counterboarding action. They led a team of Vidian soldiers through the corridors, combining Anthony's unconventional human tactics with Vidian technology. The remaining Kzinti invaders, already reeling from the ship's external assault, found themselves unprepared for this new threat. Anthony's quick thinking and adaptability complemented the Vidians' advanced weaponry, allowing them to make steady progress through the ship's occupied sections. As they fought their way towards the bridge, Anthony heard a scream of agony through his comlink. Xena's voice distorted by pain and the neural interface. "Hold the line," he ordered Zorn, before sprinting back towards the hidden chamber. He found Xena convulsing, her body racked with spasms as she struggled to maintain the connection. Without hesitation, Anthony approached the neural interface. "Sir, don't!" a Vidian technician warned. "A human mind isn't designed to—" Anthony ignored the warning, placing his hands on the interface panels. A jolt of electricity surged through him as his mind connected with the ship's systems. The sensation was overwhelming. Anthony's consciousness expanded, flooded with a torrent of information and sensations. For a moment, he thought he might lose himself in the vast network of data. Then he felt Xena's presence. Their minds touched, intertwined, breaking down the barriers between human and Vidian. Memories, thoughts, and emotions flowed between them, creating a bond deeper than words could express. This unexpected joining amplified the ship's capabilities. Anthony's human adaptability merged with Xena's innate connection to Vidian technology, creating a synergy that pushed the vessel beyond its normal limits. Together, they unleashed the full might of the Vidian ship against the Kzinti warship. Energy weapons fired in perfect synchronization, each shot finding a weak point in the enemy's defenses. Shields morphed and adapted, anticipating each Kzinti attack before it landed. The enemy vessel, already damaged from Xena's initial assault, began to crumble under the onslaught. Its shields failed, critical systems overloading and cascading explosions. As the Kzinti warship erupted in a final cataclysmic blast, Anthony and Xena disconnected from the neural interface. They collapsed to the floor, their bodies pushed beyond their limits. The last thing Anthony saw before losing consciousness was Xena's face. Despite her exhaustion, she managed a small smile. Their hands found each other, fingers intertwining as darkness claimed them both. In the shared realm of unconsciousness, their minds remained loosely connected. Dreams and memories flowed between them, human and Vidian experiences merging into a tapestry of shared experience. As Vidian medical teams rushed to stabilize their conditions, news of their victory spread throughout the ship. The remaining crew rallied, pushing back against the Kzinti borders with renewed vigor. But even in the midst of celebration, challenges loomed. The ship's systems were still critically damaged, and the threat of Kzinti reinforcements hung over them like a shadow. As Anthony and Xena fought their way back to consciousness, they knew their greatest trials still lay ahead. Anthony's eyes fluttered open, his vision blurry and unfocused. The stark white ceiling of the medical bay slowly came into view as he blinked away the haze of unconsciousness. He tried to move, but his limbs felt heavy and unresponsive. "Easy there, soldier," a gentle voice said. A Vidian doctor leaned over him, her scaled features etched with concern. "I'm Dr. Alara. You've been through quite an ordeal." Anthony's mind raced, fragmented memories of the battle flooding back. "Xena," he croaked, his voice hoarse. "Is she—" Dr. Alara nodded towards a nearby bed. "The princess is here, stable but unconscious like yourself until moments ago." Anthony turned his head, wincing at the effort. Xena lay on an adjacent medical bed, her chest rising and falling steadily. He felt a strange tug in his mind as he looked at her, as if an invisible thread connected them. "What happened?" Anthony asked, trying to piece together the gaps in his memory. Dr. Alara's expression turned grave. "Your minds are still linked from the neural interface. We're monitoring the situation closely, but separating you too quickly could cause severe neurological damage." As if to emphasize the doctor's words, A cascade of foreign sensations washed over Anthony. He saw flashes of Vidian cities, felt the weight of royal expectations, and tasted foods he'd never encountered. Xena's memories and experiences flowed through him like a waking dream. A commotion outside the medical bay drew their attention. Security Chief Zorn burst in, his normally stoic demeanor cracking under the strain of recent events. "Doctor, we need the human," Zorn said, his eyes darting between Anthony and Xena. "The Kzinti commander we captured, Razorclaw, refuses to cooperate. We need information about their invasion plans." Dr. Ilara stepped between Zorn and Anthony's bed. "Chief, my patient is in no condition to—" "It's all right," Anthony interrupted, pushing himself up despite the doctor's protests. "I can do this." As Anthony swung his legs over the side of the bed, he noticed something odd. His movements felt different, more fluid. He glanced down at his arms, seeing a faint scale-like pattern shimmering just beneath the skin. Dr. Ilara noticed his confusion. "There have been unexpected physiological changes. Your body appears to be adapting to elements of Vidian biology." Before Anthony could process this revelation, Zorn spoke again, his voice urgent. "We don't have time for this. Our long-range sensors have detected an incoming human fleet, and we've just picked up a cloaked Kzinti vessel approaching from behind the moon. We need that intelligence now." Anthony nodded, pushing aside his questions and focusing on the task at hand. He stood, wobbling slightly as he adjusted to his altered physiology. "Take me to Razorclaw." As they left the medical bay, Anthony cast one last glance at Xena. In that moment, he felt a surge of emotions that weren't entirely his own. Concern, admiration, and something deeper that made his heart race. The corridors of the ship bore the scars of recent battle. Vidian crew members worked tirelessly to repair damaged systems and fortify key positions. Anthony could feel the tension in the air, a mix of relief at their victory and anxiety about the challenges still to come. They reached the brig, where a towering Kzinti warrior paced inside an energy cell. Razorclaw's amber eyes narrowed as he saw Anthony approach. "So the humans send their pet to interrogate me," Razorclaw growled, baring his fangs. Anthony stepped closer to the cell, drawing on his training and the strange new instincts flowing through him. "We don't have to be enemies, Razorclaw. Your ship is destroyed, your invasion thwarted. Help us understand why you attacked, and we can end this conflict." Razorclaw laughed, a harsh, guttural sound. "You understand nothing, human. This is merely the beginning. Our forces gather even now, preparing to—" The Kzinti commander's words were cut short as the ship rocked violently. Alarms blared throughout the vessel. Zorn's communicator crackled to life. "Chief, the cloaked Kzinti ship has opened fire. Our shields are barely holding." Anthony's mind raced, drawing on both his human tactical knowledge and the Vidian ship schematics now ingrained in his psyche. "The auxiliary power core," he said, turning to Zorn. "If we reroute emergency power through the secondary EPS conduits, we might be able to boost our shields and weapons." Zorn nodded, already moving to relay the orders. As they rushed towards the bridge, Anthony felt a sudden, searing pain in his head. He stumbled, bracing himself against the wall. Through the haze of agony, he saw a vision of Xena in the medical bay, her body arching off the bed as she experienced the same pain. Their mental link pulsed with shared anguish and a desperate need to be reunited. Anthony pushed through the pain, knowing that the fate of both their peoples hung in the balance. As they reached the bridge, he saw the massive form of the uncloaked Kzinti vessel looming on the main view screen. The human fleet was visible in the distance, rapidly approaching the battle. Anthony knew that the next few moments would determine not just their survival, but the future of human-Vidian relations and the course of the war against the Kzinti. With his unique blend of human ingenuity and Vidian knowledge, Anthony prepared to face this new threat. But even as he focused on the tactical situation, a part of his mind remained connected to Xena. Their shared consciousness holding secrets that could change everything, if they survived long enough to uncover them. The fate of both their peoples hung in the balance as Anthony prepared to face this new threat, his mind still partly connected to Xena's. Suddenly, the ship rocked violently, throwing Anthony off balance. Alarms blared as the cloaked Kzinti vessel emerged from behind the moon, its weapons blazing. The surprise attack caught everyone off guard, including Dr. Alara, who had just begun the delicate procedure to separate Anthony and Xena's mental link. In the medical bay, sparks flew from overloaded equipment. The power surge intended to sever the neural connection instead intensified it. Xena's eyes snapped open, her consciousness flooding into Anthony's mind with unprecedented force. Anthony gasped, overwhelmed by the torrent of sensations. He could feel Xena's heartbeat as if it were his own, her thoughts intertwining with his in a dizzying dance. Their shared awareness expanded, encompassing the entire ship in a way neither had experienced before. "Anthony!" Xena's voice echoed in his mind. "We need to move, now!" Without a word, they leapt into action, their movements perfectly synchronized. They sprinted through the corridors, dodging panicked crew members and sparking conduits. Their shared consciousness allowed them to navigate the damaged ship effortlessly, anticipating obstacles before they appeared. They burst into the auxiliary control room, their hands flying over control panels in perfect unison. Anthony's tactical knowledge merged seamlessly with Xena's innate understanding of Vidayan technology. Together, they assessed the ship's status in seconds, formulating a plan to repel the Kzinti attack. "The power core is failing," Anthony said, his voice overlapping with Xena's as they spoke in unison. "We need to reroute emergency power through the secondary EPS conduits." Their fingers danced across the controls, executing complex commands faster than any individual could manage. The ship's systems responded, shields strengthening and weapons coming online with renewed power. Outside, the space around them erupted into chaos. The human fleet, led by Admiral Helena Winters, moved to intercept the Kzinti forces. Energy weapons crisscrossed the void, explosions blooming like silent fireworks against the backdrop of stars. Security Chief Zorn burst into the control room, his eyes widening at the sight of Anthony and Xena, working in perfect harmony. "We need intel from the Kzinti commander," he said urgently. "Can you—" "We're on it," Anthony and Xena replied simultaneously, their shared mind already formulating an interrogation strategy. They made their way to the brig, their steps in perfect rhythm. As they approached Razorclaw's cell, the Kzinti commander's eyes narrowed, sensing something unusual about the human Vidian pair. "You think your mind tricks will work on me?" Razorclaw snarled. Anthony stepped forward, Xena's knowledge of Kzinti psychology flowing through him. "We're not here to trick you, Razorclaw. We're here to understand." As Anthony spoke, Xena's voice echoed in his mind, guiding his words. They probed Razorclaw's defenses, their combined skills proving formidable. Bit by bit, they extracted crucial information about the Kzinti invasion plans, hidden staging areas, and key leaders. But the mental exertion took its toll. Pain lanced through their shared consciousness, memories and emotions bleeding together. Anthony staggered, feeling Xena's fatigue as acutely as his own. Dr. Alara's voice crackled over the comm system. "Your neural patterns are becoming dangerously erratic. You need to disengage immediately." They ignored the warning, pushing harder. The ship shuddered around them as the Kzinti intensified their assault. Through their link to the ship's systems, they felt each hit like a physical blow. "We need to end this now," Xena's thought reverberated through their shared mind. Anthony nodded, understanding instantly. Together, they sprinted back to the auxiliary control room. Without hesitation, they connected themselves to the ship's neural interface. Their consciousness expanded exponentially, encompassing every system, every circuit of the massive Vidian vessel. They became one with the ship, feeling its pain, its grit to survive. Through the viewscreen, they saw Admiral Winter's fleet engage in a fierce dogfight with Kzinti fighters. With their merged consciousness, they coordinated seamlessly with the human ships, anticipating Kzinti maneuvers and exploiting weaknesses in their formation. Energy weapons lanced out from the Vidian ship with deadly precision, guided by Anthony and Xena's combined tactical genius. Kzinti ships exploded in silent bursts of fire and debris. But as they pushed the damaged Vidian technology beyond its limits, The strain on their merged minds reached a critical point. Anthony felt his sense of self beginning to blur. Memories and personality traits mixing with Xena's in a dizzying whirlpool of shared consciousness. We're losing ourselves, Xena's thought echoed, tinged with fear and exhilaration. Before they could respond, a new alert blared through the ship's systems. The information they had extracted from Razorclaw suddenly snapped into focus. A hidden Xinti superweapon was en route, capable of destroying both the Vidian ship and the human fleet. Their merged consciousness reeled at the implications. They had to warn Admiral Winters to prepare for this new threat, but as they struggled to formulate a plan, their individual identities continued to fade, melding into a single, hybrid consciousness. Dr. Ilara's voice cut through their shared thoughts, filled with urgency. Your life signs are critical. We need to separate you now, or we'll lose you both. Anthony and Xena fought to maintain their sense of self, even as they pushed the ship's systems to their limits. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, dependent on their ability to survive this unprecedented mental fusion and face the approaching Xinti superweapon. As the Kzinti forces began to retreat, Anthony and Xena's merged consciousness reached out to Admiral Winter's ship, their message carrying the weight of desperate urgency. They had won this battle, but an even greater threat loomed on the horizon, one that would test the limits of the human-Vidian alliance and their own fragile, intertwined existence. Identities. As the ship's systems began to shut down, Anthony and Xena's shared consciousness fractured, their unified perception shattering into a kaleidoscope of disjointed thoughts and sensations. No! They cried out in unison, their voices echoing through the auxiliary control room as Zorn's emergency protocols took effect. The neural interface flickered and died, severing their connection to the ship's systems. Anthony felt as if he was being torn apart from the inside, his sense of self unraveling like a frayed tapestry. Beside him, Xena collapsed to the floor, her body convulsing as her mind struggled to disentangle from his. Through the haze of pain, Anthony managed to input the last crucial piece of data into the ship's main computer, the defensive strategy they had devised to counter the Xinti superweapon. As his fingers left the console, he felt his legs give way, and the world around him faded to black. When Anthony regained consciousness, he found himself in the medical bay, surrounded by the hum of Vidian medical equipment. Dr. Ilara's face swam into view, her expression a mix of concern and cautious optimism. "Welcome back," she said softly. "You gave us quite a scare." Anthony tried to speak, but his throat felt raw and parched. He turned his head, searching for Xena, and found her lying on a nearby bed, her chest rising and falling steadily. "She's stable," Dr. Ilara assured him, following his gaze. "You both are, though the neural trauma was significant." As Anthony's senses sharpened, he became aware of a strange sensation coursing through his body. The faint, scale-like pattern on his skin seemed more pronounced, and he could feel his injuries from the earlier battles knitting together at an accelerated rate. What's happening to me?" he managed to croak. Dr. Ilara's eyes widened as she examined the readings on her medical scanner. "Incredible," she murmured. "Your body is exhibiting enhanced regenerative capabilities. It seems the physiological changes caused by your mental fusion with Xena have continued to progress." Before Anthony could process this information, a tremor ran through the ship. The distant sound of energy weapons fire echoed through the hull. "The Kzinti superweapon?" Anthony gasped, memories of their shared vision flooding back. He struggled to sit up, fighting against the lingering weakness in his limbs. Dr. Ilara gently pushed him back down. "Easy. Admiral Winter's fleet is engaging the weapon now. They're using the strategy you and Xena devised." As if summoned by the mention of her name, Xena stirred on her bed. Her eyes fluttered open, immediately seeking out Anthony. Their gazes locked, and in that instant, Anthony felt a surge of emotion that wasn't entirely his own. "I can still feel you," Xena whispered, her voice tinged with wonder and confusion. Anthony nodded, understanding instinctively what she meant. Though they were no longer sharing a single consciousness, a deep empathic link remained between them. He could sense her disorientation, her relief at seeing him, and an undercurrent of concern for their people. Another tremor shook the ship, more violent this time. The lights in the medical bay flickered ominously. "The shields!" Anthony and Xena said in unison, their shared worry spiking through their empathic connection. Without a word, they both swung their legs off their respective beds, ignoring Dr. Ritalara's protests. As they stood, Anthony noticed that Xena's movements seemed more fluid, her typically regal bearing now infused with a hint of human flexibility. "Your DNA," Dr. Rilara exclaimed, scanning Xena with wide eyes. "It's showing signs of increased adaptability, incorporating human traits. This is unprecedented." Xena flexed her fingers, a look of wonder crossing her face. "I feel different, stronger somehow." Their shared epiphany was interrupted by the ship's comm system crackling to life. Admiral Winter's voice filled the medical bay, tense and urgent. "Vidian vessel, our shields are failing under the superweapons assault. We need options, fast." Anthony and Xena exchanged a glance, their residual mental link buzzing with shared insight. In that moment, they both understood that their unique connection, forged in the crucible of their mental fusion, might be the key to overcoming this threat. "We need to get to the bridge," Anthony said, already moving toward the door. Xena nodded, falling into step beside him. "Our vision, we saw weaknesses in both the Sinti weapon and our defenses. If we can communicate that information, we might just save both our peoples," Anthony finished. As they made their way through the corridors, supporting each other against the increasingly violent tremors racking the ship, Anthony marveled at how in sync they still were. Though no longer sharing a single mind, their thoughts and movements flowed together with an effortless grace. They burst onto the bridge where Security Chief Zorn was coordinating the ship's defenses. His eyes widened at the sight of them, taking in their changed appearances and the palpable connection between them. "Anthony, Princess Xena," he said, his voice a mix of relief and confusion. "You shouldn't be—" "There's no time," Anthony cut him off, moving to the main tactical display. "We have information that could turn the tide of this battle." Xena stepped up beside him, her hand brushing against his as they both reached for the console. At the point of contact, their shared vision sparked to life once more, clearer and more detailed than before. As one, they began inputting commands, their fingers flying over the controls with inhuman speed and precision. Their shared knowledge of human tactics and Vidian technology merged seamlessly, creating a defense matrix unlike anything seen before. On the display, the massive Kzinti superweapon loomed, its energy signature dwarfing the Allied fleet. As another wave of destructive energy lashed out, Anthony and Xena's modifications to the shield harmonics took effect. The energy wave hit the shields and seemed to hesitate, its destructive force fragmenting and dissipating against the newly calibrated defenses. A cheer went up from the bridge crew as the shields held. But Anthony and Xena knew this was only the beginning. As they worked to refine their strategy, they could feel their bodies continuing to change, adapting in ways that neither human nor Vidian science had thought possible. The battle raged on, with the fate of two civilizations hanging in the balance. Yet as Anthony and Xena stood side by side, their minds linked and their bodies evolving, they felt a glimmer of hope. Whatever the outcome, their unprecedented union had opened up new possibilities for both their peoples. Possibilities that could reshape the future of human-Vidian relations and perhaps change the course of the war against the Kzinti. The Kzinti superweapon prepared for another assault, its energy readings spiking ominously. Anthony and Xena shared a determined look, their hands moving in perfect synchronization across the tactical controls. The next phase of the battle was about to begin, and they were ready to face it together. As Anthony and Xena stood side by side at the tactical controls, their minds linked and bodies evolving, a sudden wave of exhaustion washed over them. The strain of their mental fusion and the intense battle had taken its toll. Anthony's vision blurred, and he felt his legs give way beneath him. Beside him, Xena swayed, her usual grace faltering. "Medical team to the bridge!" Zorn barked, rushing to support the pair as they collapsed. Dr. Alara burst onto the bridge moments later, her team close behind. She knelt beside Anthony and Xena, her medical scanner whirring as she assessed their condition. "We need to get them to the medical bay immediately," she said, her voice tight with concern. "Their neural patterns are highly unstable." As the medical team whisked Anthony and Xena away on hover stretchers, the ship shuddered under another assault from the Sinti superweapon. Zorn turned his attention back to the tactical display, his expression grim as he watched the energy readings spike ominously. In the medical bay, Dr. Alara and her team worked feverishly to stabilize their patients. Anthony and Xena lay on adjacent beds, their bodies twitching sporadically as their minds struggled to process the aftermath of their mental fusion. "Their brainwave patterns are unlike anything I've ever seen," Dr. Alara murmured, studying the readouts on her medical console. "It's as if their minds are still trying to communicate, even though they're no longer directly linked." As if in response to her words, Anthony's eyes snapped open. "The weapon!" he gasped, his voice hoarse. We know." Xena stirred beside him, her eyes meeting his with a look of shared understanding. "The fluctuation," she said, her words echoing his thoughts. "Before each attack." Dr. Alara leaned in, her interest piqued. "What are you trying to say? What did you see?" Anthony and Xena turned to her in unison, their words tumbling out in a disjointed jumble as they struggled to articulate their shared vision. Dr. Alara's eyes widened as she began to grasp the importance of what they were saying. "We need to get this information to Admiral Winter," she said, reaching for the communication panel. But as she attempted to hail the bridge, static filled the channel. "The Xinti attack must have damaged our communications array," she muttered, frustration evident in her voice. Anthony tried to sit up, only to be gently pushed back down by one of the medical assistants. "We have to find a way," he insisted, his eyes locked with Xena's. "The fleet needs this information." Dr. Alara's gaze flicked between her patients and the malfunctioning communication panel. Suddenly, her expression shifted as an idea took shape. "There might be a way," she said slowly, "but it's risky." She quickly explained her plan to use a modified version of the neural interface to link Anthony and Xena directly to the ship's communication systems. As she spoke, another tremor shook the vessel, more violent than before. "Do it," Xena said, her voice firm despite her weakened state. Anthony nodded in agreement, their shared perseverance palpable. Dr. Alara hesitated for a moment, then sprang into action. "Prepare the neural interface," she ordered her team. "And somebody get Security Chief Zorn down here. We'll need his authorization." As the medical team rushed to modify the equipment, Zorn's voice crackled over the emergency communication channel. "Dr. Alara, we've lost 3 human ships to the Kzinti weapon. Whatever you're planning, do it fast." Dr. Alara's hands flew over the controls, making last-minute adjustments to the neural interface. "Initiating connection now," she announced, her voice tense as she activated the system. Anthony and Xena gasped in unison as the interface engaged, their minds once again merging with the ship's systems. But this time, instead of controlling the vessel, they found themselves immersed in a sea of data, their shared consciousness expanding to encompass the entire battlefield. Through the ship's sensors, they perceived the Sinti superweapon in terrifying detail. They saw the fluctuations in its energy matrix, the brief moments of vulnerability just before each devastating attack. Without conscious thought, they began to transmit this information, their merged minds acting as a conduit between the Vidian ship and the rest of the fleet. On the bridge of her flagship, Admiral Winter started as her tactical display suddenly came alive with new data. Her eyes widened as she processed the information, quickly grasping its significance. "All ships, concentrate fire on these coordinates," she ordered, transmitting the targeting data to the fleet. "Wait for my mark. Now!" The Allied ships unleashed a coordinated barrage, their weapons finding their mark with uncanny precision. The Kzinti superweapon shuddered under the assault, its energy field flickering as the attacks exploited its newly revealed weakness. Back in the medical bay, Anthony and Xena convulsed on their beds, their bodies racked with pain as they channeled an overwhelming flood of information. Dr. Alara watched in horror as their vital signs began to fluctuate wildly. "We need to disconnect them," she shouted, reaching for the neural interface controls. Not yet, Zorn countered, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. Look. On the screen, they saw the Xinti superweapon beginning to destabilize, its massive form racked by internal explosions. But even as it faltered, the weapon turned its full fury toward the Vidian ship in a final, desperate attack. Anthony and Xena's eyes snapped open, glowing with an otherworldly light. Their hands moved in perfect synchronization, inputting commands into the medical bay's emergency console. Throughout the ship, systems rerouted and power surged as they enacted their last-ditch plan. The Xinti weapon's energy waves struck the Vidian ship with devastating force, but the enhanced shields held barely. As the wave passed, the superweapon finally succumbed to its wounds, exploding in a spectacular burst of light and energy. In the medical bay, Anthony and Xena's bodies went limp as the neural interface overloaded, severing their connection. Dr. Alara and her team rushed to stabilize them, fighting to keep them alive as their bodies underwent further mysterious changes. As the immediate threat passed and the fleet began to assess the damage, Security Chief Zorn's comm link crackled to life. "Sir," came a breathless report, "we've detected multiple Xinti life signs throughout the ship. They must have been in hiding, waiting for an opportunity to strike." Zorn's expression hardened as he looked from the unconscious forms of Anthony and Xena to the damaged systems around him. The battle for the ship's survival, it seemed, was far from finished. Over. Zorn's mind focused as he processed this new threat. He glanced at the unconscious forms of Anthony and Xena, then back to Dr. Alara. "We need to move them to a more secure location," he said urgently. "Can we safely transport them?" Dr. Alara nodded, her fingers flying over her medical console. "I've stabilized them for now, but we need to get them to the specialized medical bay on Deck 7. It's equipped with the latest human-Vidian hybrid technology." As if on cue, a team of medics burst into the room, pushing 2 hover stretchers. With practiced efficiency, they transferred Anthony and Xena onto the stretchers and began moving them out of the medical bay. Zorn fell into step beside Dr. Alara as they followed the hover stretchers through the corridors. "What's their condition?" he asked, his voice low. "Critical but stable for now," Dr. Alara replied, her eyes fixed on her patients. "Their physiology is changing at an unprecedented rate. I've never seen anything like it." As they entered the specialized medical bay, Zorn's communicator crackled to life. "Chief, we've cornered a group of Xinti in Engineering Section 3, but they've barricaded themselves in. We need backup." Zorn cursed under his breath. "I'm on my way," he replied, then turned to Dr. Alara. "Keep me updated on their condition. And doctor, be prepared for anything." As Zorn rushed off to deal with the Xinti threat, Dr. Alara and her team set to work, transferring Anthony and Xena to the advanced medical pods. The room hummed with energy as the hybrid technology began its work, bathing the patients in a soft, pulsating light. Hours passed as Dr. Alara monitored their progress, her eyes widening as she observed the changes taking place. Anthony's body was incorporating Vidian genetic traits, his muscle density increasing and his sensory organs shifting in subtle ways. Beside him, Xena's royal Vidian physiology was adapting human characteristics, her brain patterns fluctuating in ways that suggested enhanced cognitive function. A knock at the door pulled Dr. Alara from her observations. She turned to see a tall, slender human woman with sharp green eyes and close-cropped silver hair. "Dr. Alara, I'm Dr. Zara Novak, xenobiologist from the human fleet," the woman introduced herself, extending a hand. "Admiral Winters sent me to assist with our unique patients." Dr. Alara shook the offered hand, relief washing over her. "Dr. Novak, your timing couldn't be better. I could use your expertise in interspecies genetics. What we're seeing here is beyond anything in our medical databases." As the 2 doctors bent over the medical pods, comparing notes and theories, a commotion in the corridor outside drew their attention. Security Chief Zorn burst into the room, his uniform singed and a fresh cut above his eye. "We've contained most of the Xinti, but they're getting desperate," he reported, his breath coming in short gasps. "They've started setting traps in the damaged sections. We need a new strategy." Dr. Alara glanced at the medical pods, where Anthony and Xena lay motionless. They're still unconscious, but their condition is improving. Their brainwave patterns suggest increased neural activity. Dr. Novak leaned in, studying the readouts with intense focus. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a series of oscillating lines on the screen. Their neural patterns are synchronizing. It's as if they're communicating on a subconscious level. As if in response to her words, Anthony's eyes fluttered open, followed moments later by Zena's. They turned their heads in unison, their gazes locking with an intensity that made the others in the room shift uncomfortably. "The Kazinti," Anthony rasped, his voice hoarse from disuse. "We can help." Zena nodded, her movements mirroring Anthony's. "We can sense them," she added, her voice equally strained. "Their fear, their desperation." Dr. Alara moved to stop them as they attempted to sit up, but Dr. Novak held her back. "Wait," she said, her eyes alight with scientific curiosity. "This could be exactly what we need." Zorn stepped forward, his tactical mind already racing with possibilities. "What do you mean you can sense them?" "You can sense." Anthony and Zena exchanged a look, a silent communication passing between them. "It's like an awareness," Anthony tried to explain. "We can feel their presence, their emotions." "If we could enhance this ability," Dr. Novak mused, "we might be able to locate the hidden Sinti without putting more lives at risk." Dr. Alara frowned, concern etching lines across her face. "It's too dangerous. We don't fully understand what's happening to their bodies." As the debate began to heat up, a violent tremor shook the ship, nearly knocking them off their feet. Zorn's communicator crackled to life with a burst of urgent chatter. "Sir, long-range sensors have detected an anomaly at the edge of the system," came a panicked voice. "It could be a cloaked Kazinti vessel." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Anthony and Zena sat up straighter in their medical pods, their eyes meeting once again in silent communication. "We don't have a choice," Anthony said, his voice stronger now. "You need our help." Zena nodded in agreement. "Whatever the risks, we're willing to take them." Dr. Novak stepped forward, her expression a mix of excitement and apprehension. "I have an idea," she said, looking from Anthony and Zena to the concerned faces of Dr. Ilara and Zorn. "A procedure that could temporarily amplify their empathic link. It's risky, but it might be our best chance." As Zorn weighed the options, another tremor rocked the ship, more violent than the last. Time was running out. "Do it," he said finally, his voice grim, "but be ready to pull the plug at the first sign of trouble." As Dr. Novak and Dr. Ilara began preparations for the procedure, Anthony reached out, his fingers intertwining with Zena's. Their eyes met, a universe of unspoken words passing between them in that single glance. The fate of the ship, and possibly the entire human-Vidian alliance, now rested on their shoulders. As the doctors worked feverishly around them, Anthony and Zena steeled themselves for what was to come, their newly forged bond the only constant in a world of uncertainty. Uncertainty. The medical bay hummed with tension as Dr. Novak initiated the risky procedure to amplify Anthony and Zena's empathic link. "Initiating neurostimulation sequence," Dr. Novak announced, her fingers dancing across the control panel. A soft blue light bathed Anthony and Zena's bodies as the hybrid technology came to life. Dr. Alara's eyes darted between the vital sign monitors, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Heart rates are elevating," she reported, brain activity spiking beyond normal parameters. Anthony and Zena's bodies tensed, their fingers tightening around each other's hands. Their eyes, wide open now, seemed to stare through the ceiling, seeing something beyond the confines of the medical bay. "Neural pathways are expanding," Dr. Novak said, her voice tight with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "The empathic link is stabilizing. Wait, something's happening." Suddenly, Anthony and Zena gasped in unison, their backs arching off the medical beds. The room's lights flickered as a surge of energy pulsed through the ship's systems. "What's going on, Ornanon?" Zorn demanded, his hand instinctively moving to his weapon. "Their minds," Dr. Alara breathed, staring at the neural activity readouts in amazement. "They're expanding beyond the medical bay. It's as if they're connecting with the entire ship." Anthony's voice, strained but clear, cut through the tension. We can see them, he said, his eyes unfocused. The Kzinti, they're everywhere. Xena nodded, her movements perfectly synchronized with Anthony's. Engineering Level 3, Maintenance Shaft 7, Cargo Bay 2. We can sense their fear, their desperation. Zorn's eyes widened as he realized the implications. Without hesitation, he activated his comlink. All security teams, this is Chief Zorn. I'm transmitting new coordinates. Move in and neutralize the Xeni threats. Use caution. They're cornered and desperate. As Zorn relayed the intelligence to his teams, Dr. Ilara noticed Anthony and Xena's vital signs beginning to fluctuate dangerously. Heart rates are approaching critical levels, she warned. We need to terminate the procedure soon. Dr. Novak shook her head, her eyes never leaving the neural activity displays. Not yet. They're still receiving information. Just a few more moments. Anthony's body suddenly went rigid. There's a ship, he gasped, at the edge of the system, cloaked. It's massive. Zorn immediately relayed this information to the bridge. Within moments, Admiral Winter's voice crackled over the comm system. Confirmed. We've detected a large cloaked vessel holding position just outside the system's edge. It appears to be more advanced than anything we've encountered before. As the implications of this new threat sank in, Xena's eyes snapped open, filled with a mix of shock and concern. Wait, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. There are civilians aboard that ship, Kzinti females, young ones. Anthony nodded weakly. And someone else. A Vidian. Important. An ambassador? Dr. Ilara's eyes widened in recognition. Ambassador Thala? But she was reported dead in the last Kzinti attack. The strain of maintaining the enhanced empathic state began to take its toll on Anthony and Xena. Their bodies shook with tremors, sweat beading on their foreheads as their temperature spiked. We need to stop now, Dr. Ilara insisted, moving to terminate the procedure. Wait, Anthony called out, his voice hoarse. One more thing. The Kzinti, some of them want peace. There's a faction. Before he could finish, Anthony and Xena's bodies went limp. The empathic link severed as the amplification procedure shut down. The medical bay erupted into a flurry of activity as Dr. Ilara and her team rushed to stabilize their patients. Get them to the specialized recovery chamber, Dr. Ilara ordered, her voice calm despite the urgency of the situation. Their hybrid physiology needs targeted support. As Anthony and Xena were transferred to the recovery chamber, Dr. Novak studied the data from the procedure, her eyes wide with fascination. Their DNA, it's stabilizing. The hybridization process seems to have accelerated. We may be looking at increased resilience, enhanced cognitive abilities. Zorn, meanwhile, was already formulating a plan. We need a covert operation to infiltrate that Kzinti ship, he said, his tactical mind racing. A small team, mix of human and Vidian operatives. Our priority is to rescue Ambassador Thala and assess the situation with the civilians. Dr. Novak looked up from her data analysis, a spark of inspiration in her eyes. What if we included Anthony and Xena in the operation? Once they've recovered, their enhanced abilities could provide real-time intelligence. They might even be able to communicate with the Kzinti civilians. Zorn frowned, considering the proposal. It's risky. They've already been through so much, but their abilities could be the edge we need to pull this off. As the debate began, the ship's comm system crackled to life. Admiral Winter's voice filled the room, tense and urgent. Security Chief Zorn, I need your infiltration plan within the hour. The longer that Kzinti ship sits out there, the greater the risk of reinforcements arriving. We're on a tight deadline. Zorn nodded grimly. Understood, Admiral. I'll have the plan ready. As Zorn left to finalize the details of the covert mission, Dr. Ilara and Dr. Novak turned their attention back to Anthony and Xena. In the specialized recovery chamber, the two lay side by side, their hands still clasped together. Even in unconsciousness, their connection remained strong, their minds linked in ways that science was only beginning to understand. The fate of 3 species now hung in the balance, with Anthony and Xena at the center of it all. As the medical team worked tirelessly to ensure their recovery, the rest of the ship prepared for the dangerous mission ahead. The next few hours would determine the course of interstellar relations for years to come, and time was running out. Out. The next few hours would determine the course of interstellar relations for years to come, and time was running short. As Anthony and Xena lay recovering in the specialized chamber, their bodies underwent a remarkable transformation. The hybrid DNA that had initially threatened their lives now stabilized, granting them abilities beyond normal human or Vidian limits. Dr. Novak monitored their progress with growing excitement, her eyes darting between holographic displays of their cellular structure. "Fascinating," she murmured, zooming in on a particularly active cluster of neurons. "Their synaptic density has increased by 300%. The potential cognitive enhancements are extraordinary." Dr. Ilera approached, her face a mixture of concern and scientific curiosity. "And their physical capabilities?" "Off the charts," Dr. Novak replied, pulling up another set of data. "Muscle fiber density, bone strength, cellular regeneration, all significantly enhanced. They're evolving into something new." As if on cue, Anthony's eyes fluttered open, followed closely by Xena's. They sat up in unison, their movements fluid and precise. The medical staff watched in awe as the pair stood, their bodies showing no signs of the trauma they had endured mere hours ago. "How do you feel?" Dr. Alara asked, approaching cautiously. Anthony flexed his hand, a look of wonder on his face. "Strong, clear, like I can sense everything." Xena nodded in agreement, her eyes scanning the room. "It's as if the ship itself is an extension of our bodies." Security Chief Zorn entered the medical bay, his expression grave. "I hate to rush your recovery, but we're on a tight schedule. Admiral Winters has approved your participation in the covert mission. Are you up for it?" Anthony and Xena exchanged a glance, a silent conversation passing between them in an instant. "We're ready," they said in unison. The next hours passed in a blur of intense preparation. Zorn led Anthony and Xena through a series of simulated scenarios, pushing their new abilities to the limit. In the ship's holographic training room, they faced virtual Xinti warriors, navigated treacherous ship layouts, and practiced stealth maneuvers. "Incredible," Zorn muttered as he watched Anthony and Xena move in perfect synchronization, anticipating and countering simulated attacks before they even occurred. "It's like they're reading each other's minds." Meanwhile, Dr. Ilera and her team worked feverishly to complete the specialized biosuits. The sleek form-fitting garments hummed with integrated technology designed to support and enhance Anthony and Xena's hybrid physiology. "The suits will amplify your natural abilities," Dr. Alara explained as she helped them don the high-tech armor. "They'll also protect you from potential Kzinti countermeasures and help regulate your new hybrid biology." As the launch time approached, the chosen infiltration team gathered in the shuttle bay. Elite human and Vidian operatives checked their gear, their faces set with tenacity. At the center of it all stood Anthony and Xena, their biosuits gleaming under the bay lights. Admiral Winter's voice crackled over the comm system. "The fleet is in position. We'll begin our distraction maneuvers on your mark, Chief Zorn." Zorn nodded, his eyes scanning the assembled team. "Remember, our primary objective is to locate and extract Ambassador Thela. Anthony and Xena will use their empathic abilities to guide us once we're aboard. Stay sharp, stay quiet, and stay alive." The team boarded the modified shuttle, its experimental stealth systems humming to life. As the bay doors opened, revealing the star-studded expanse of space, Anthony felt Xena's hand slip into his. Their eyes met, a universe of unspoken words passing between them. The shuttle glided silently from the Vidian ship, instantly becoming nearly invisible against the backdrop of space. As they approached the massive Kzinti vessel, Anthony and Xena's empathic senses sharpened. They could feel the complex tapestry of emotions aboard the enemy ship. Fear, anger, confusion, and underneath it all, a growing current of doubt. "There," Xena whispered, pointing to a section of the Kzinti ship's hull. "I sense uncertainty there. It's our best chance for a quiet entry." The pilot nodded, guiding the shuttle toward the indicated spot. As they drew closer, Anthony's enhanced vision picked out minute details in the alien vessel's structure. "There's a maintenance hatch," he said. "Barely visible, but it's there." The shuttle's docking mechanism extended, latching onto the Sinti ship with barely a tremor. Zorn turned to the team, his voice low and intense. This is it. Once we're through that hatch, there's no turning back. Are we ready? Anthony and Xena stood, their movements perfectly in sync. The rest of the team followed suit, weapons at the ready. As the airlock cycled open, Anthony felt a surge of commitment flow through him, amplified by his connection with Xena. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The infiltration team stepped into the unknown, the fate of 3 species hanging in the balance. As they moved deeper into the Xinti ship, Anthony and Xena's empathic senses stretched out, searching for any sign of Ambassador Thala and potential allies among the Xinti. The mission had begun, and with it, a new chapter in the complex dance of interstellar diplomacy and conflict. As the airlock sealed behind them, Anthony and Xena took point, their enhanced senses immediately attuned to their surroundings. The team moved with practiced stealth through the dimly lit corridors of the Sinti vessel, every step calculated and precise. Anthony's heightened awareness picked up the faintest vibrations through the deck plating, alerting him to distant movement. He raised a hand, signaling the team to halt. Xena closed her eyes, stretching out with her empathic abilities. 2 Kzinti, approaching from the left junction, she whispered, her voice barely audible. They're distracted, arguing about something. Zorn nodded, gesturing for the team to take cover in the shadows of a nearby alcove. As they pressed themselves against the cool metal walls, Anthony felt Xena's consciousness brush against his. In that moment of connection, he saw through her eyes, feeling the complex tapestry of emotions emanating from the approaching Kzinti. The alien crew members passed by, their feline features set in expressions of agitation. Their heated whispers carried hints of dissent and uncertainty. Once they were out of earshot, Anthony gave the all-clear signal. As they pressed deeper into the ship, the team encountered their first major obstacle, a heavily secured bulkhead blocking access to the ship's intersections. Anthony studied the alien locking mechanism, his mind racing through possible solutions. Xena, he said quietly, can you sense anything about this security system? She placed her hand on the control panel, her brow furrowing in concentration. It's alive somehow, biometric, but I think I can... Her fingers danced across the panel, guided by an instinctive understanding of the Sinti technology. The bulkhead slid open with a soft hiss, revealing the path ahead. Zorn raised an eyebrow, impressed. Nice work. Let's keep moving. As they ventured further into the heart of the Xinti ship, Anthony and Xena's empathic senses sharpened. The emotional landscape of the vessel became clearer, revealing currents of unrest and division among the crew. Suddenly, Anthony froze, his mind turning from a familiar presence. Ambassador Thala, he breathed. I can sense her. She's close. Xena nodded, her eyes gleaming with renewed purpose. This way, she said, leading the team down a narrow corridor. They soon found themselves outside a high-security holding area. Through the reinforced door, Anthony could feel waves of anxiety and hope emanating from the ambassador. He placed his hands on the door, muscles tensing as he prepared to force it open. Wait, Xena whispered, her fingers flying over a nearby control panel. I can disrupt the surveillance systems temporarily, on my mark. Anthony nodded, counting down silently. As Xena gave the signal, he channeled his enhanced strength into a single, powerful push. The door groaned, then gave way with a screech of protesting metal. Inside, Ambassador Thala looked up, her eyes wide with surprise and relief. You came, she said, her voice hoarse. I wasn't sure anyone would. As Zorn's team secured the area, Anthony and Xena helped the ambassador to her feet. We need to move quickly, Anthony said. What can you tell us about the situation here? Thala's expression grew serious. It's complicated. There's a growing faction among the Xinti who favor peace, but the hardliners are desperate, willing to risk everything for one final confrontation. Before they could discuss further, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The team's presence had finally been detected. So much for stealth, Zorn growled, readying his weapon. New plan. We fight our way out. Anthony and Xena exchanged a glance, their hybrid minds working in perfect synchronization. We'll take point, Anthony said. Our empathic abilities can help us avoid the worst of the resistance. As they moved through the now chaotic ship, Anthony and Xena's enhanced senses went into overdrive. They guided the team through a series of evasive maneuvers, anticipating Zinti movements and finding paths of least resistance. During a momentary lull in the action, Anthony's empathic senses picked up something unexpected. "Wait," he said, holding up a hand. "I'm sensing civilians, Kzinti females and young ones." Xena nodded, her face etched with concern. "I feel it too. They're frightened, hiding." Ambassador Thella's eyes widened. "This changes everything. If we can make contact with them, it could be the key to forcing negotiations." Zorn looked skeptical. "It's risky. We're already compromised." "We have to try," Xena insisted. "This might be our only chance to end this conflict without further bloodshed." After a moment of tense deliberation, Zorn nodded. "Lead the way, but be ready for anything." Anthony and Xena guided the team through a maze of service corridors, their hybrid senses attuned to the presence of the hidden Zinni civilians. As they approached a sealed compartment, they could feel waves of fear and uncertainty emanating from within. "Let us handle this," Anthony said, stepping forward with Xena. Together they focused their empathic abilities, projecting a sense of calm and safety. Slowly, cautiously, the compartment door slid open, revealing a group of Kzinti females and children huddled inside. Ambassador Thela stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. "We're not here to harm you. We offer protection and a chance for peace. Will you hear us out?" As the ambassador began her delicate negotiations, Anthony's communicator crackled to life. Admiral Winter's voice came through, tense and urgent. "The Kzinti ship is powering up weapon systems. If we don't see signs of de-escalation soon, I'll have no choice but to order a full assault. Time is running out." Anthony looked at Xena, a silent understanding passing between them. They had come too far to fail now. In that moment, they made a decision that would push their newfound abilities to the limit. "Admiral," Anthony replied, his voice steady, "we have a plan, but we're going to need a little more time." As Xena explained their daring proposal to establish direct empathic contact with the Zinti commander, Anthony prepared himself for the challenge ahead. They were about to attempt something unprecedented, a meeting of minds that could reshape the future of interspecies relations. With restored dedication, the team began to move towards the ship's command center. Anthony and Xena led the way, their hybrid physiology allowing them to navigate the chaos with superhuman agility and strength. As they approached the bridge, Anthony felt Xena's hand slip into his. Their eyes met, a universe of unspoken words passing between them. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The doors to the command center loomed before them, the final barrier between conflict and potential peace. Anthony took a deep breath, centering himself for the empathic challenge ahead. As Zorn's team prepared to breach the entrance, Anthony and Xena focused their minds, ready to project their hybrid consciousness into the unknown. The moment had arrived. With a nod from Zorn, the assault on the bridge began, and with it, the most crucial test of Anthony and Xena's newfound abilities. The fate of 3 species now hung in the balance, with their hybrid minds serving as the unlikely bridge between war and peace. Peace and cooperation. The fate of 3 species hung in the balance as Anthony and Xena reached out with their hybrid minds, forging an unprecedented connection with the Kzinti commander. As their consciousnesses intertwined, a sudden surge of energy coursed through their linked minds. Anthony felt a rush of sensations, feline instincts, alien thought patterns, and a lifetime of Kzinti experiences flooding his awareness. Beside him, Xena gasped, her eyes widening as she too was swept up in the torrent of shared consciousness. Their biosuits, designed by Dr. Ilara to enhance their hybrid abilities, began to emit a soft, pulsating light. The glow intensified with each passing second, bathing the bridge in an otherworldly radiance. Anthony's muscles tensed as he felt his enhanced abilities amplify beyond their previous limits. Every nerve in his body singing with newfound power. The Kzinti commander staggered back, overwhelmed by the flood of shared experiences and emotions. his feline features contorted in a mix of awe and confusion as he struggled to process the alien sensations coursing through his mind. Seizing the moment of vulnerability, Anthony and Xena projected a powerful vision of peace and cooperation. They shared images of humans, Vidians, and Kzinti working side by side, exploring the galaxy as allies rather than adversaries. The commander's mental defenses crumbled under the weight of this shared future. "Stand down," the Kzinti leader rasped, his voice barely above a whisper. "All weapons systems, deactivate. This conflict ends now." A collective gasp rippled through the bridge as the Kzinti crew hesitated, then moved to comply. The tension in the air dissipated, replaced by a tentative hope. Ambassador Thela stepped forward, her diplomatic instincts kicking into high gear. "Commander, I propose we formalize this ceasefire immediately. We can draft a preliminary agreement to ensure the safety of all parties involved." As Thela began negotiations, Anthony's heightened senses picked up on a new threat. He turned to Xena, seeing the same realization dawning in her eyes. "The ship's power core," he said urgently. "It's unstable." Xena nodded, already interfacing with the nearby console. "Battle damage. If we don't stabilize it soon?" Anthony relayed the information to Security Chief Zorn, who quickly organized a joint engineering team. Without hesitation, Anthony led the group towards the ship's core, his enhanced strength and agility allowing him to navigate the unfamiliar corridors with ease. In the engine room, alarms blared as Kzinti engineers struggled to contain the growing instability. Anthony's biosuit pulsed with increasing intensity, the strange energy seeming to resonate with the ship's systems. "Xena," he called through their comlink, "we need your expertise here." Her voice came through, calm and focused. "I'm seeing the data now. The containment field is failing. We need to reroute power from auxiliary systems to reinforce it." Anthony's hands flew over the alien controls, guided by an instinctive understanding born from their shared consciousness with the Kzinti commander. Kzinti engineers watched in amazement as the human navigated their technology with impossible ease. "Containment field stabilizing," Xena reported. "But we're not out of the woods yet. The core itself is still highly unstable." Sweat beaded on Anthony's forehead as he worked alongside the Kzinti, his enhanced strength proving crucial in manually adjusting coolant flow regulators. The biosuit's glow intensified, seeming to pulse in sync with the ship's power fluctuations. After several tense minutes, the alarms finally silenced. A collective sigh of relief echoed through the engine room. "Core stability restored," Xena confirmed, "but the ship's defensive systems are offline. We're vulnerable." Anthony nodded, already moving back towards the bridge. "Admiral Winters, this is Anthony. The Kzinti ship is stabilized but defenseless. Request protective perimeter." "Understood," Winters replied. "Moving to extend our defensive line now." As Anthony returned to the bridge, he found Ambassador Thela deep in discussion with both human and Vidian leadership. The successful negotiation and cooperation in averting disaster had opened new possibilities for interspecies relations. "We're proposing to integrate willing Kzinti individuals and families into our alliance," Thela explained as Anthony approached. "It's unprecedented, but after today's events, it seems not only possible, but necessary." Anthony nodded, his mind racing with the implications. He turned to Xena, noticing for the first time the toll their enhanced empathic experience had taken on her. She looked drained, yet her eyes shone with an inner fire he'd never seen before. "Dr. Alara and Dr. Novak want to run some tests," she said, her voice low. "Our biosuits, they're not behaving as expected." Before Anthony could respond, a commotion near the entrance to the bridge caught their attention. A group of Kzinti civilians, mostly females and young, had gathered. One stepped forward, her feline features set in tenacity. "We've seen what you can do," she said, addressing Anthony and Xena directly. "The peace you've brokered, the lives you've saved. We request asylum within your alliance." The request sent a ripple of surprise through the assembled leaders. Security Chief Zorn frowned, his tactical mind already assessing potential risks. "We'll need to implement a thorough screening process," he said. "Perhaps temporary housing on a neutral station until we can make proper arrangements." As discussions began on how to handle this unexpected development, Anthony found himself drawn to Xena. The intensity of their shared empathic experience had deepened their connection in ways he was only beginning to understand. Their eyes met, and a universe of unspoken words passed between them. The growing tension of their feelings, amplified by their enhanced state, crackled in the air between them. "We should report to medical," Xena said softly, her hand brushing against his. "They'll want to start those tests soon." Anthony nodded, acutely aware of every point of contact between them. As they made their way to the medical bay, their biosuits continued to pulse with strange energy, a visible reminder of the uncharted territory they now found themselves in, both physically and emotionally. The future of their hybrid nature, their evolving abilities, and their deepening relationship remained uncertain. But as they prepared for the battery of tests that awaited them, one thing was clear. The events of this day had irrevocably changed the course of interspecies relations in this sector of the galaxy. As Anthony and Xena entered the medical bay, the pulsating light from their biosuits cast an ethereal glow on the advanced diagnostic equipment surrounding them. Dr. Elara approached, her expression a mix of concern and scientific curiosity. "We've set up a specialized examination area for you both," she said, gesturing to two adjacent biobeds. "The equipment here will allow us to monitor your physiology in real time as we run our tests." Anthony and Xena exchanged a glance before settling onto the beds. As they lay down, holographic displays sprang to life above them, showing intricate maps of their internal systems. Dr. Novak's eyes widened as he studied the readouts. "Fascinating," he murmured. "Their DNA, it's completely stabilized into a new genetic structure. It's unlike anything we've ever seen before." As the examination progressed, Anthony felt a tingling sensation throughout his body. He turned his head to look at Xena, noticing that her biosuit was pulsing in sync with his own. "Dr. Elara?" Xena called out, her voice tinged with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Our empathic abilities, they feel different, stronger somehow." Dr. Elara nodded, making notes on her datapad. "We're detecting significantly increased neural activity in the regions associated with empathic perception. It seems your abilities have expanded beyond their previous limits." As the medical team continued their analysis, Anthony found himself acutely aware of the emotions in the room. He could sense Dr. Elara's professional curiosity, Dr. Novak's almost unchecked excitement, and most prominently, Xena's swirling mix of emotions that mirrored his own. Suddenly, Dr. Novak let out a gasp. "The biosuits!" he exclaimed, pointing to the pulsating light. "They're not just reacting to the changes, they're adapting, integrating with your nervous systems." Before anyone could respond, the doors to the medical bay slid open, revealing Ambassador Thala and Security Chief Zorn. "We've received word of your unique situation," Thala said, her eyes darting between Anthony and Xena. "The implications of your transformation are significant, not just medically, but diplomatically as well." Zorn stepped forward, his posture tense. "We need to discuss security protocols. Your enhanced abilities, combined with your access to sensitive information, could pose potential risks." Anthony sat up, feeling a surge of protectiveness. "We understand your concerns, Chief Zorn, but I assure you our loyalty to the Alliance remains unchanged." Thala raised a hand, her expression thoughtful. "Perhaps we can turn this situation to our advantage. Anthony, Xena, your unique hybrid nature could make you ideal intermediaries between our species and the Kzinti refugees." As discussions about their potential new roles unfolded, Anthony found his attention drawn to Xena. Their eyes met, and he felt a surge of emotion through their empathic connection. The intensity of their shared experience had deepened their bond in ways he was only beginning to understand. Their silent exchange was interrupted by a comm alert. Admiral Winter's voice filled the room, tension evident in his tone. "We've detected an unidentified vessel approaching at high speed," the Admiral reported. "Initial scans show a mix of Kzinti and unknown technology. I'm calling a meeting to discuss our response. Anthony, Xena, given your unique abilities, your input will be valuable." As they prepared to leave the medical bay, Dr. Elara approached with a final observation. "The energy patterns in your biosuits, they seem to be storing and processing information. It's as if you're accumulating a database of knowledge about all three species. Anthony nodded, feeling the weight of their newfound responsibilities. As they made their way to the bridge, he felt Xena's hand slip into his, their biosuits pulsing in unison. The bridge was a flurry of activity when they arrived. Admiral Winters stood at the center, surrounded by holographic displays of the approaching vessel. "We need to gather more information," Winters stated, his gaze sweeping across the assembled team. "I'm proposing a reconnaissance mission to investigate this ship before it reaches our position." Anthony stepped forward, feeling a surge of tenacity. "Admiral, Xena and I volunteer for this mission. Our enhanced abilities could prove crucial in a first contact scenario." The Admiral's expression tightened as he considered the proposal. After a moment of tense silence, he nodded. "Approved. Prepare for immediate deployment. The future of our alliance may depend on what you discover out there." As Anthony and Xena moved to suit up for the mission, they shared a moment of silent communication. Their empathic bond allowed them to convey a mix of excitement, apprehension, and unwavering support without a single word. The docking bay hummed with activity as they boarded a sleek reconnaissance craft. As the airlock sealed behind them, Anthony felt a surge of energy from his biosuit, as if it was preparing for the challenges ahead. "Ready?" he asked, looking at Xena. She nodded, her eyes shining with drive. "Let's do this." As the craft disengaged from the main ship and accelerated towards the unknown vessel, Anthony and Xena focused their enhanced senses on the task ahead. The fate of three species hung in the balance as they ventured into the unknown, their hybrid nature about to be put to the ultimate test. The fate of three species hung in the balance as they ventured into the unknown, their hybrid nature about to be put to the ultimate. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the reconnaissance craft. Anthony's hands flew across the control panel, bringing up a holographic display of the surrounding space. "Xena, look at this," he said, his voice tense. "The unidentified vessel, it's accelerating rapidly towards the Alliance fleet." Xena leaned in, her eyes narrowing as she studied the data. "You're right. At this speed, they'll reach our position in minutes." Before they could discuss further, Admiral Winters' voice crackled over the comm system. "All units, return to defensive positions immediately. The reconnaissance mission is aborted. I repeat, abort mission and return to defensive formation." Anthony and Xena exchanged a quick glance, their empathic link conveying a mix of frustration and concern. Without a word, Anthony engaged the craft's engines, executing a sharp turn back towards the Alliance fleet. As they approached, the massive form of the unidentified vessel came into view. Its hull gleamed with an otherworldly sheen, overflowing with weapon emplacements that dwarfed anything in the Alliance's arsenal. "By the stars," Xena breathed, her eyes wide. "That's a Xinti warship. I've never seen one so large or advanced." Anthony felt a chill run down his spine. The fragile peace they had worked so hard to establish with the Xinti refugees now seemed to hang by a thread. As they docked with the flagship, Security Chief Zorn was waiting for them. "We need you both on the bridge immediately," he said, his normally stoic features etched with tension. "Your hybrid abilities may be our best chance at coordinating our defenses." They rushed to the bridge, finding it a hive of frantic activity. Admiral Winters stood at the center, his face grim as he studied the tactical displays. "Anthony, Xena," he called as they entered, "I need you to help integrate our defensive systems. Your unique understanding of both human and Kzinti technology could give us the edge we need." Without hesitation, they moved to the central console. Their biosuits pulsed with energy as they interfaced with the ship's systems. Anthony felt a rush of information flooding his mind, the combined tactical data of the entire fleet suddenly at his fingertips. Xena's voice echoed in his mind through their empathic link. "I see it too. We can do this." As they worked, their movements became a synchronized dance, anticipating each other's actions with preternatural accuracy. The disparate systems of the human, Vidian, and allied Kzinti vessels began to align, forming a cohesive defensive network. Suddenly, a booming voice filled the bridge, emanating from every speaker and communication device. "Attention, Alliance Fleet. This is Commander Razorclaw of the Kzinti Empire. You will surrender all Xinti refugees immediately and withdraw from this sector. Failure to comply will result in your destruction. The bridge fell silent, the weight of the threat hanging heavy in the air. Admiral Winters stepped forward, his fist tight. Open a channel to Ambassador Thala and the Xinti refugee representatives. We need to discuss our response. As the emergency meeting convened, Anthony and Xena found themselves pulled into the heart of the debate. The room crackled with tension as various factions argued over the best course of action. We must stand our ground, one Vidian representative shouted. To give in to these demands would be to betray everything we've worked for. A Xinti refugee leader countered, her voice trembling. You don't understand. Razorclaw is known for his brutality. If we resist, he will show no mercy. Anthony felt a surge of emotions from the gathered Xinti refugees. Fear, uncertainty, and a deep-seated dread at the mention of Razorclaw's name. He glanced at Xena, seeing the same realization in her eyes. Admiral, Anthony interjected, the refugees recognize Razorclaw. From what we're sensing, he's not just any commander. He's a feared military leader with a reputation for ruthlessness. Before anyone could respond, the ship rocked violently. Security Chief Zorn's voice came over the comms. Admiral, the Xinti warship has launched a barrage of advanced probes. They're scanning our defenses. Admiral Winters' face hardened. Implement countermeasures immediately. We can't let them analyze our capabilities. As the Alliance scrambled to protect their sensitive information, Anthony felt an idea forming. He turned to Xena, their biosuits pulsing in unison. What if we could use our suit's ability to store and process information to our advantage? Xena's eyes lit up with understanding. Create a false data feed? Mislead their scans? Anthony nodded, already reaching for a nearby console. Admiral, he called out, we have a plan that might buy us some time. As they explained their strategy, Anthony could see the glimmer of hope in Admiral Winters' eyes. Do it, he ordered, and may the stars be with us all. Their hands flew over the controls, their hybrid minds working in perfect synchronicity. The biosuit's glow intensified as they interfaced with the fleet's central systems, weaving a complex web of misinformation. On the main view screen, they watched as the massive Xinti warship adjusted its approach, responding to the false data now flooding its sensors. It was working, but for how long? Ambassador Thala's voice cut through the tension. I've attempted to open a dialogue with Commander Razorclaw, but he refuses to negotiate. We must prepare for the possibility of conflict. Anthony felt Xena's hand grasp his, their biosuits pulsing with shared drive. As they continued to maintain their deception, the Alliance fleet hung on the precipice of an unfolding confrontation that would test the limits of their newfound unity and the true potential of Anthony and Xena's hybrid nature. Nature. As the tense standoff continued, Anthony and Xena's deception strategy began to show signs of strain. The false data feed they had created to mislead the enemy vessel's sensors started to break down under the intense scrutiny of the Xinti's advanced technology. Anthony's eyes darted across the holographic displays, his enhanced senses picking up minute fluctuations in the data stream. Xena, he said urgently, our ruse is failing. We need a new plan, fast. Xena nodded, her mind already racing through possibilities. Suddenly, her biosuit pulsed with energy, and an idea sparked in her mind. The suits, she said, turning to Anthony. Remember what Dr. Alera said about them storing and processing information? What if we could use that energy for more than just data? Anthony's eyes widened as he grasped her thought. An electromagnetic pulse, he breathed. If we can channel the energy from our suits into the fleet's weapon systems, we could potentially disable Razorclaw's ship, Xena finished. Without wasting a moment, they approached Admiral Winters, quickly outlining their bold new strategy. The Admiral's face was grave as she considered the proposal. It's risky, Winters said, her eyes scanning the tactical displays. But given our current situation, it might be our best option. You have my authorization to proceed. As Anthony and Xena moved to implement their plan, alarms blared across the bridge. Security Chief Zorn's voice cut through the chaos. Admiral, Razorclaw's ship is launching a series of probing attacks on our outer defenses. The Alliance fleet shuddered as the first volley of Zinti weapons fire struck their shields. Winters barked orders, coordinating a defensive response while Anthony and Xena raced against time. The pair moved from ship to ship, physically connecting their biosuits to each vessel's main power grid. As they worked, Anthony felt the energy building within his suit, a tingling sensation that quickly grew to a burning ache. "Xena," he gasped, fighting through the pain. "Are you feeling this?" She nodded, her face contorted with effort. "It's like every cell in my body is on fire, but we can't stop now." As they continued their work, the battle around them intensified. Smaller Alliance vessels took heavy damage from Razor Claw's attacks, their crews struggling to maintain defensive positions. Security Chief Zorn's voice echoed through the comm systems, relaying orders and coordinating movements with a speed and precision made possible only by Anthony and Xena's empathic link. On the bridge of the flagship, Ambassador Thela made a final, desperate attempt at diplomacy. Transmitting a message to Razor Claw's ship, she announced, informing them of the Kzinti civilians among our fleet. For a brief moment, the attacks ceased. In that lull, Anthony and Xena redoubled their efforts, pushing their hybrid bodies to the limit as they channeled unprecedented amounts of energy into the Alliance's weapon systems. Dr. Ilara's voice crackled over their personal comms, filled with concern. "Your vital signs are becoming erratic. The energy buildup in your suits is reaching dangerous levels. You need to stop." "No time," Anthony grunted, making the final connections on the last ship. "We're almost there." Suddenly, a wave of sensory input crashed over them. The empathic abilities enhanced by their biosuits went into overdrive, bombarding them with the thoughts and emotions of thousands of minds across both fleets. Xena stumbled, her hands clutching her head. "Anthony," she cried out, "I can't. It's too much." Fighting through his own mental turmoil, Anthony reached for her, their biosuits pulsing in unison. "Focus on me," he said, gripping her shoulders. "Just focus on me." Admiral Winter's voice cut through their shared agony. "Energy readings are off the charts. We need to activate the EMP now, ready or not." With a final Herculean effort, Anthony and Xena completed the energy transfer. The electromagnetic pulse erupted from the Alliance fleet, a wave of invisible force that expanded rapidly through space. Systems across both fleets flickered and died as the pulse washed over them. Razor Claw's massive warship, with its advanced technology, was hit the hardest. Its weapons fell silent, its engines sputtered and failed. As the pulse dissipated, Anthony and Xena collapsed to the deck, their biosuits smoking and sparking. Medical teams rushed to their aid as emergency power systems slowly came back online across the Alliance fleet. Admiral Winters, seeing the Zinti warship dead in space, seized the moment. "Prepare a boarding party," she ordered. "We end this now, before they can recover." As the boarding team assembled, a mix of human, Vidian, and allied Zinti forces, Anthony and Xena were rushed to the medical bay. Their hybrid bodies, pushed beyond their limits, fought to stabilize. Dr. Ilara worked feverishly over them, her face etched with worry. "Their cellular structure is destabilizing," she reported to Admiral Winters. "The energy surge has affected them at a genetic level. We're doing everything we can, but—" Her words trailed off as the boarding party launched, streaking across the void towards Razor Claw's disabled warship. The future of the Alliance hung in the balance, with Anthony and Xena's sacrifice opening a narrow window of opportunity. As the medical team fought to save the hybrid couple, the boarding party prepared to face whatever resistance awaited them on the Zinti vessel. The next moments would determine the fate of 3 species and the future of interstellar relations. As the boarding party streaked towards Razor Claw's disabled warship, the focus on the Alliance flagship shifted back to the medical bay, where Anthony and Xena's lives hung in the balance. The hybrid couple lay motionless on biobeds, their bodies racked by the aftermath of the massive energy discharged from their suits. Dr. Ilara's fingers flew over holographic displays, her face etched with concentration. "Their cellular structure is destabilizing at an alarming rate," she reported to Dr. Novak, who stood nearby preparing a series of injections. "We need to stabilize them before the damage becomes irreversible." The medical team moved with practiced efficiency, employing a combination of Vidian healing techniques and experimental human regenerative therapies. Glowing nanites swarmed over Anthony and Xena's bodies, repairing damaged tissue at the molecular level, while pulsating energy fields worked to realign their disrupted bioelectric fields. Suddenly, Anthony's body arched off the bed, his muscles spasming violently. Alarms blared as his vital signs spiked erratically. Xena's form followed suit moments later, her bio-readings mirroring Anthony's distress. "What's happening?" Dr. Novak demanded, rushing to adjust the treatment parameters. Dr. Alara's eyes widened as she analyzed the incoming data. The residual energy from the EMP, it's triggering some kind of mutation in their hybrid physiology. Their genetic structure is rewriting itself. As the doctors fought to stabilize the couple, their bodies continued to convulse, the biobed's restraints straining to hold them in place. The air crackled with energy, small arcs of electricity dancing across their skin. "We need to slow this process down," Dr. Alara decided, her voice tight with urgency. "Prepare the stasis pods. It's our only chance to prevent further trauma while we figure out what's happening to them." With practiced precision, the medical team transferred Anthony and Xena into the sleek cylindrical stasis pods. As the transparent covers slid into place, a soft blue glow enveloped the hybrid couple, their bodies finally stilling as the stasis field took effect. Dr. Alara let out a shaky breath, her shoulders sagging with momentary relief. "That should buy us some time. Now let's figure out exactly what's happening to their bodies." Meanwhile, aboard Razor Claw's warship, the Alliance boarding party faced fierce resistance. Security Chief Zorn led the charge, his team a diverse mix of human, Vidian, and allied Kzinti forces. They pushed through the ship's winding corridors, the air thick with the acrid smell of weapons fire and the metallic tang of blood. "Watch your left flank," Zorn shouted, ducking behind a bulkhead as a barrage of energy bolts sizzled past. He tapped his comm badge, his voice tense. "Admiral, we're encountering heavy resistance. The ship's systems are coming back online faster than anticipated. We need to move quickly." As if to emphasize his point, the corridor lights flickered to life, bathing the battlefield in harsh illumination. The Kzinti defenders, their eyes gleaming with feral intensity, pressed their advantage, forcing the boarding party to fall back. Zorn gritted his teeth, assessing their options. That's when he noticed an oddity in the ship's layout. "There," he pointed, indicating a heavily reinforced door set into the bulkhead. "That level of security doesn't match the rest of the ship's design. Whatever's behind that door, Razor Claw doesn't want us to find it." With a series of hand signals, Zorn directed part of his team to provide cover fire, while he and a small group approached the mysterious door. As they worked to bypass its security measures, the pitched battle raged around them. Finally, with a hiss of hydraulics, the door slid open. Zorn's eyes widened as he took in the sight before him. "Admiral," he breathed into his comm, "you're not going to believe this. We found some kind of superweapon. The technology, it's like nothing I've ever seen." Back on the Alliance flagship, Admiral Winters received Zorn's report with steadfast perseverance. "Secure that weapon at all costs," she ordered. "We can't let it remain in Razorclaw's hands." As Winters contemplated her next move, Ambassador Thela approached, her face a mix of concern and hope. "Admiral, I've just received a communication from Razorclaw's ship. A faction of moderate Kzinti wishes to defect. They say they've been inspired by the refugees among our fleet." Winter's brow furrowed as she weighed this new information. The potential for a diplomatic solution was tempting, but the threat of the superweapon loomed large. After a moment's consideration, she made her decision. "Open a channel for negotiations," she instructed Thela, "but tell Zorn to proceed with the mission. We can't risk losing control of that weapon." As the delicate dance of diplomacy and combat unfolded, a new crisis erupted in the medical bay. The stasis pods containing Anthony and Xena began to pulse with an intense familiar light, the same energy that had emanated from their biosuits during the EMP discharge. Dr. Novak's eyes widened in alarm as he read the energy signatures. "The pods are overloading. We need to evacuate the medical bay immediately." As the medical staff scrambled to respond to the crisis, Anthony and Xena's minds, still linked by their empathic bond, drifted in a shared dreamscape. Visions of possible futures flashed before them. Worlds of peace and cooperation intertwined with scenes of devastating conflict. In one moment, they saw a grand council chamber where humans, Vidians, and Xinti sat together in harmony. In the next, they witnessed entire star systems consumed by the fury of Razorclaw's superweapon. These visions, born from their evolving hybrid nature, granted them unique insights into the delicate balance of the current conflict. As their bodies underwent further changes within the glowing stasis pods, their minds raced to process the flood of information. Aboard Razorclaw's warship, Security Chief Zorn and his team finally breached the bridge. The ensuing battle was brutal, with both sides taking heavy casualties. As the Alliance forces gained the upper hand, Razorclaw revealed his final play. The Xinti commander's eyes blazed with fanatical intensity as he held up a small device. "This is linked to the super weapon," he snarled. "One press, and both our fleets will be reduced to cosmic dust. Stand down, or I'll ensure none of us survive this day." The standoff created a moment of terrible tension. Zorn, his weapon trained on Razorclaw, knew they were out of options. He opened a channel to Admiral Winters, his voice tight. "Admiral, we have a situation." As Winters received the dire news, her gaze turned to the medical bay, where Anthony and Xena's stasis pods continued to pulse with energy. Their vital signs had stabilized, and brain activity was spiking. Dr. Alara looked up from her readouts, her eyes wide with realization. "Admiral," she reported, "Anthony and Xena are regaining consciousness, and their empathic abilities, they've expanded beyond anything we've seen before." Winter's mind raced, considering the possibilities. These two hybrids, with their unique abilities and the insights gained from their shared visions, might be the key to resolving this seemingly impossible situation. With decisive swiftness, Winters gave her orders. "Prepare Anthony and Xena for immediate transport to Razorclaw's ship. Their abilities might be our only chance to end this without further bloodshed." As the medical team rushed to comply, the fate of both fleets hung in the balance. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test the limits of Anthony and Xena's newfound powers and determine the future of interstellar relations. The stasis pods hissed open, revealing the transformed figures of Anthony and Xena. Their eyes snapped open, glowing with an otherworldly light as they prepared to face the greatest challenge of their lives. Their eyes still glowing with an otherworldly light, focused on Admiral Winters as she approached. "Anthony, Xena," the Admiral said, her voice tight with urgency. "I know you've just regained consciousness, but we need your help. Razorclaw has a super weapon, and he's threatening to destroy both fleets. Your enhanced abilities might be our only chance to dedication this without further bloodshed." The hybrid couple exchanged a glance, their empathic bond allowing them to communicate without words. They nodded in unison, their bodies still adjusting to the significant changes they had undergone. Dr. Alara stepped forward holding two sleek, newly designed biosuits. "These should support your evolved physiology," she explained, helping them into the suits. "We've incorporated what we've learned about your transformations, but be careful. We don't fully understand the extent of your new abilities." As the medical team made final adjustments to their suits, Anthony and Xena felt a surge of energy coursing through their bodies. The biosuits pulsed softly, adapting to their unique hybrid nature. "We're ready," Anthony said, his voice carrying a new depth of authority. Moments later, they materialized on the bridge of Razorclaw's warship, flanked by Security Chief Zorn and his team. The tense atmosphere hit them like a physical force, their enhanced empathic abilities allowing them to sense the fear and tenacity emanating from both sides. Razorclaw's eyes widened as he took in the appearance of the hybrid couple. "What manner of creatures are you?" he demanded, his hand tightening on the dead man's switch. Anthony stepped forward, his posture relaxed but alert. "We are the bridge between our species," he said, his voice calm and measured. "We offer a unique solution to this conflict." Xena focused her abilities, projecting a sense of calm throughout the bridge. The effect was immediate, with both Alliance forces and Xinti crew members visibly relaxing. "We propose a direct mental link between you and Admiral Winters," Anthony continued, addressing Razorclaw. Through us, you can experience each other's perspectives, cutting through the mistrust that has fueled this conflict. Razorclaw's whiskers twitched, a sign of curiosity overcoming his initial skepticism. And how do I know this isn't some trick? Xena spoke, her voice carrying a subtle harmonic that seemed to resonate with everyone present. You can feel our influence already, can't you? We offer truth, nothing more. The Zinti commander considered for a long moment, his grip on the switch loosening slightly. Very well, he growled. But at the first sign of deception, I will not hesitate to end us all. Security Chief Zorn nodded to his team, signaling them to stand ready as Anthony and Xena positioned themselves between Razorclaw and a newly activated holographic projection of Admiral Winters. The hybrid couple closed their eyes, focusing their enhanced abilities. Their biosuits began to pulse with energy, adapting to the unique demands of their evolved powers. As they established the mental link, a shimmering field of energy enveloped them, connecting the minds of the human admiral, the Zinti commander, and the hybrid intermediaries. The effect was instantaneous and profound. Winters gasped as she experienced flashes of Razorclaw's memories. The rigid honor code of Kzinti society, the pressure to prove one's worth through conquest. Razorclaw, in turn, felt the weight of Winters' responsibility, her genuine desire for peaceful coexistence, tempered by the need to protect her people. Anthony and Xena guided the flow of thoughts and emotions, their own hybrid nature allowing them to bridge the vast differences between human and Kzinti minds. As the connection deepened, they expanded it, drawing in key members of both crews. The bridge of Razorclaw's warship became eerily quiet as the shared consciousness took hold. Alliance soldiers lowered their weapons, experiencing firsthand the complex motivations of their Zinti counterparts. Kzinti crew members relaxed their aggressive stances, feeling the sincerity of the Alliance's peaceful intentions. Sweat beaded on Anthony and Xena's foreheads as they channeled vast amounts of psychic energy. Their biosuits worked overtime, glowing with an intense light as they regulated the couple's vital functions. Suddenly, a surge of power coursed through the mental link. The hybrid couple's eyes snapped open, glowing with an intense blue light. The expanded connection reached its peak, creating a moment of perfect understanding between the opposing forces. In this moment of shared consciousness, Razorclaw made his decision. With a growl that was part defiance, part acceptance, he released his grip on the dead man's switch. The device clattered to the floor, its threat neutralized. Enough, Razorclaw said, his voice heavy with emotion. I see now that there is another way. As the mental link began to fade, Anthony and Xena collapsed, the strain of maintaining the connection finally overwhelming them. Security Chief Zorn rushed to their side as Ambassador Thiela stepped forward to begin formal negotiations with Razorclaw. Medical teams from both ships converged on the exhausted hybrid couple, their biosuits now dim and struggling to stabilize their unique physiology. As they were prepared for transport back to the Alliance flagship, whispers of their extraordinary feat began to spread through both fleets. Admiral Winters, her holographic form still present on Razorclaw's bridge, addressed the assembled crews. What we've witnessed here today opens new possibilities for understanding between our species. Let this be the first step towards a lasting peace. As Anthony and Xena were transported to the specially designed medical bay on the Alliance flagship, Dr. Alar and Dr. Novak prepared for the complex task of analyzing the changes in their hybrid physiology. The events aboard Razorclaw's warship had not only averted a catastrophic war, but had also unveiled new potential in the fusion of human and Vidian traits. In the wake of the averted crisis, both fleets began to stand down from combat readiness. Security Chief Zorn coordinated with cooperative Kzinti crew members to secure the superweapon, while diplomatic channels buzzed with activity as the Alliance leadership grappled with the implications of this new era of interspecies cooperation. As Anthony and Xena lay unconscious in the medical bay, their bodies still adapting to their evolved state, the galaxy stood on the brink of a new chapter in its history. The hybrid couple's unique abilities had opened doors that once seemed firmly shut, but with these new possibilities came new challenges and questions that would shape the future of interstellar relations. As Anthony and Xena lay unconscious in the medical bay, their bodies continued to adapt to their evolved state. The biosuits pulsed with a soft, rhythmic glow, mirroring the couple's synchronized heartbeats. Dr. Alara and Dr. Novak worked tirelessly, monitoring the unprecedented changes in their patient's genetic structure. "Look at this," Dr. Alara said, gesturing to a holographic display of Anthony's DNA. "The human and Vidian genes are intertwining in ways I've never seen before." Dr. Novak nodded, his eyes fixed on Xena's readouts. "It's the same here. Their bodies seem to be adapting to channel and control the energy they experienced during the mental link." As they spoke, the biosuits began to change. The material shifted, flowing like liquid metal before seeming to melt into Anthony and Xena's skin. Dr. Alara gasped, reaching out to touch Anthony's arm. Where the suit had been, there was now a seamless, iridescent layer that moved with his skin. "Fascinating," she breathed. "The suits are integrating with their bodies, creating an adaptive layer that enhances their natural abilities." Before they could investigate further, alarms blared throughout the ship. Admiral Winter's voice came over the intercom, tense and urgent. "Attention all personnel. We have a situation on Razorclaw's warship. A group of extremist Xinti have staged a mutiny and seized control of key systems, including the superweapon. Prepare for potential hostile action." In the medical bay, Anthony and Xena's vital signs spiked. Their eyelids fluttered and brainwave patterns indicated increased activity. "They're responding to the crisis," Dr. Novak said, amazed. "Even unconscious, their empathic abilities are picking up on the situation." Admiral Winter strode into the medical bay, her face grim. "Doctors, I need Anthony and Xena conscious. I know it's risky, but they may be our only chance to drive this without full-scale battle." Dr. Alara hesitated, then nodded. "We'll use a combination of Vidian healing techniques and experimental human stimulants. It's not without risk, but given the circumstances." As the medical team prepared the hybrid couple for awakening, Security Chief Zorn's voice crackled over a secure channel. "Admiral, this is Zorn. I'm trapped on the Kzinti ship. The mutineers are led by a warrior named Shadowclaw. They've overpowered the moderates and have control of the bridge. We need to act fast." Winters acknowledged the message, her eyes never leaving Anthony and Xena as the doctors administered the stimulants. Moments later, their eyes snapped open, glowing with an otherworldly light. Anthony sat up first, his integrated biosuit rippling with energy. "Admiral," he said, his voice steady despite his recent unconsciousness. "We sense the conflict, the fear, the anger. It's overwhelming." Xena joined him, her hand finding his. "The extremists, they're afraid of change, of losing their way of life. But there's dissent among the crew. Not everyone supports Shadowclaw's actions." Winters nodded, unsurprised by their immediate grasp of the situation. "We need your help. Can you infiltrate the ship, use your abilities to neutralize the threat?" The hybrid couple shared a look, their bond allowing for silent communication. "We can," Anthony said. "Our new forms, these integrated suits, they give us advantages we didn't have before." "We'll need a small team," Xena added, "and we'll need to move fast. Shadowclaw's purpose is hardening by the minute." Within the hour, Anthony and Xena led a specially assembled infiltration team toward the Kzinti warship. Their shuttle, designed for stealth, slipped past the outer defenses undetected. As they approached, the couple's empathic abilities painted a clear picture of the ship's interior. "There," Anthony said, pointing to a damaged section of the hull. "We can enter through that breach. Security is minimal in that area." The team docked, and Anthony and Xena took point. Their integrated biosuits adapted to the environment, enhancing their strength and agility as they navigated the twisted metal of the breach. Once inside, they moved with uncanny precision, avoiding patrols with ease. As they made their way deeper into the ship, Xena paused, her head tilted as if listening to something only she could hear. The crew, many of them are conflicted. They don't all support Shadowclaw, but they're afraid to speak out. Anthony nodded, interfacing with a nearby console. His fingers danced over the alien controls, the integrated biosuit allowing him to interact with the Xinti technology as if it were an extension of himself. "I've got a layout of the ship. The command hub is 3 levels up. That's where we'll find Shadowclaw. As they approached the central lift, a patrol of Kzinti warriors rounded the corner. Before the team could react, Anthony and Xena stepped forward, their biosuits glowing softly. The Kzinti stopped, their aggressive postures softening as the hybrid couple projected a sense of calm and understanding. "We're not here to fight," Xena said, her voice carrying a subtle harmonic that seemed to resonate with the Kzinti. "We seek to prevent further bloodshed." The lead Kzinti, his ears twitching with indecision, finally lowered his weapon. "Shadowclaw does not speak for all of us," he growled, "but we are bound by honor to follow our leader." Anthony stepped forward, his eyes meeting the Kzinti's. "There is honor in protecting your people, in choosing peace over needless destruction. Help us reach Shadowclaw, and you'll be saving Kzinti lives." After a tense moment, the patrol leader nodded. "We will guide you to the command hub, but be warned, Shadowclaw will not be swayed easily." As they made their way through the ship, more Kzinti joined them, drawn by the aura of calm and purpose that Anthony and Xena projected. By the time they reached the doors to the command hub, their small team had grown into a formidable force. Inside the hub, Shadowclaw paced before the main view screen, his claws clicking against the metal deck. He spun as the doors hissed open, his eyes widening at the sight of the hybrid couple leading a mixed force of humans and Kzinti. "What is the meaning of this?" he snarled, reaching for his weapon. Anthony and Xena stepped forward, their integrated biosuits pulsing with energy. The air seemed to thicken with tension as they faced the Kzinti leader, the fate of the fragile peace hanging in the balance. "Shadowclaw," Anthony said, his voice calm but carrying an unmistakable note of authority. "We're here to talk." "Shadowclaw," Anthony said, his voice calm but carrying an unmistakable note of authority. "We're here to prevent further bloodshed and find a peaceful resolution." The Kzinti leader's eyes narrowed, his muscles tensing as he assessed the situation. Suddenly his hand shot out, slamming a button on the nearby console. Klaxons blared throughout the command hub as hidden panels slid open, revealing a series of automated defense turrets. "You think I didn't anticipate your arrival?" Shadowclaw snarled. "I will not be swayed by your human platitudes or Vidian trickery." Energy blasts erupted from the turrets, forcing Anthony, Xena, and their team to dive for cover. The hybrid couple's integrated biosuits pulsed with energy, rapidly adapting to the new threat. A shimmering, translucent layer formed over their skin, providing enhanced protection against the barrage. Anthony vaulted over a fallen console, his movements fluid and precise. "Xena, on your left," he called out, his empathic abilities sensing a hidden turret before it could fire. Xena spun, her hand outstretched. A localized energy field emanated from her biosuit, deflecting the incoming blast. The energy ricocheted off the field, striking another turret and disabling it. "The suits," Xena breathed, her eyes wide with amazement. "They're evolving, adapting to our needs." As they pressed forward, Anthony and Xena's heightened senses allowed them to navigate the maze of defenses with uncanny precision. They moved in perfect synchronization, creating openings for their team to advance while simultaneously shielding them from harm. A group of Kzinti crew members, caught between loyalty to Shadowclaw and the growing doubt in their hearts, hesitated in a nearby corridor. Anthony and Xena paused, sensing the internal conflict radiating from the group. Without words, the hybrid couple projected a series of images and emotions towards the conflicted Kzinti. They shared visions of cooperation, of a future where Kzinti and Alliance members worked side by side, their strengths complementing each other. The power of this non-verbal communication was palpable, rippling through the air like a tangible force. One by one, the Kzinti lowered their weapons. The leader of the group, a scarred veteran, stepped forward. "The command hub's main defense grid can be deactivated from the auxiliary control panel," he growled, pointing to a nearby access hatch. With the help of their new allies, Anthony and Xena quickly bypassed the security systems protecting the massive blast doors. As they slid open, the team was confronted with the sight of Shadowclaw and his core group of extremists gathered around a towering piece of machinery, the superweapons control panel. Shadowclaw whirled to face them, his massive frame dripping with fury. Yet as his gaze fell upon Anthony and Xena, a flicker of curiosity passed across his features. The hybrid nature of the couple gave him pause, his scientist's mind momentarily overriding his warrior's instincts. In that brief moment of hesitation, Anthony and Xena's team secured their position within the hub. The couple stepped forward, their biosuits pulsing with terrifying energy. "Shadowclaw," Anthony began, his voice steady. "This doesn't have to end in violence. We can—" His words were cut short by a sudden, ominous hum emanating from the superweapon. The control panel lit up with a series of warning indicators, and a dangerous energy signature began to build within the weapon's core. Panic erupted among Shadowclaw's extremists. "What's happening?" one of them yelled, frantically working the controls. "We've lost containment." Anthony and Xena shared a look of grim understanding. The weapon's activation, likely triggered by the stress of the confrontation, now threatened not just the Kzinti warship, but the entire Alliance fleet as well. Without hesitation, the hybrid couple sprang into action. They rushed to the control panel, their biosuits interfacing directly with the Kzinti technology. Lines of energy arced between their bodies and the machine as they fought to stabilize the growing disturbance. The strain was immediately apparent. Anthony's face contorted in pain as he channeled excess energy through his body. Xena gritted her teeth, her form shimmering as she struggled to process the alien data flooding her system. "The power output is too high," Anthony gasped. "We need to redirect it before—" A blinding flash of light filled the command hub as the superweapon's energy levels spiked. Anthony and Xena's biosuits began to change, merging more fully with their bodies. Their skin took on a metallic sheen, and patterns of light raced across their forms. Shadowclaw, witnessing their desperate efforts to save both Kzinti and Alliance lives, felt something shift within him. "Assist them!" he roared to his followers. "We must prevent this catastrophe." As former enemies united in a desperate bid to contain the superweapon's power, Anthony and Xena underwent a startling metamorphosis. Their hybrid forms became conduits for the weapon's energy, their bodies adapting in ways that defied conventional understanding of biology and technology. With a final Herculean effort, they brought the superweapon under control. The dangerous energy buildup dissipated, leaving the command hub in stunned silence. Anthony and Xena stood before the now dormant machine, their forms still shimmering with residual energy. Shadowclaw approached them, his earlier hostility replaced by a mix of awe and respect. I was wrong," he admitted, his voice gruff but sincere. "Perhaps there is more to be gained through cooperation than conflict." As the immediate danger passed, the focus in the command hub shifted. Alliance members and Kzinti alike stared at Anthony and Xena, marveling at their transformed state. The hybrid couple's unique abilities had not only averted disaster, but opened up new possibilities for understanding between species. Admiral Winter's voice crackled over the communication system. "Status report. What's happening over there?" Anthony stepped forward, his movements fluid despite his altered form. "The situation is under control, Admiral. We're ready to begin negotiations." As the command hub buzzed with activity, scientists and engineers from both sides already discussing the implications of what they'd witnessed, Anthony and Xena shared a private moment. Their hands intertwined, biosuits pulsing in unison. "Ready for this?" Xena asked, a small smile playing on her lips. Anthony nodded, his eyes reflecting the enormity of the task ahead. "Together," he said simply. With that, they turned to face Shadowclaw and the assembled leaders, prepared to bridge the gap between species and forge a new path forward in interstellar relations. As they prepared to address the gathered leaders, a message from Admiral Winters came through on a secure channel. "Anthony, Xena," the Admiral's voice crackled, "your actions today have not only averted a catastrophe, but opened up new possibilities for cooperation. I have a new assignment for you both." The hybrid couple exchanged glances, their biosuits pulsing in sync. "We're listening, Admiral," Anthony replied. "We're establishing a joint research facility on a neutral planet called Harmony. Your unique abilities and diplomatic skills make you the ideal candidates to oversee this project. It's crucial for strengthening the peace between humans, Vidians, and Kzinti." Xena nodded, her eyes bright with excitement. We accept, Admiral. When do we leave? As soon as you've wrapped things up there. Good luck, and keep me updated. The communication ended, and Anthony turned to address the assembled leaders. Gentlemen, we have a proposal that could benefit us all. Over the next few hours, Anthony and Xena facilitated discussions between Shadowclaw, Razorclaw, and the Alliance representatives. Their empathic abilities helped smooth over tensions and foster understanding between the former adversaries. As the negotiations concluded, Shadowclaw approached the hybrid couple. Your actions today have given me much to consider. Perhaps there is wisdom in exploring what we can achieve together. With agreements in place and a tentative peace established, Anthony and Xena boarded a shuttle bound for Harmony. The planet loomed before them, a swirling orb of blue and green. It's beautiful, Xena breathed, her hand intertwined with Anthony's. As they descended through the atmosphere, the true nature of Harmony revealed itself. Lush forests stretched as far as the eye could see, interrupted only by vast plains and shimmering bodies of water. The shuttle touched down in a clearing designated as the site for the new research facility. A team of engineers, scientists, and diplomats from all three species awaited them, their faces a mix of anticipation and uncertainty. Anthony stepped forward, his biosuit adapting to the planet's atmosphere. Welcome to Harmony, he announced. Together, we'll build something extraordinary here. Construction began immediately, with Anthony and Xena overseeing every aspect of the project. Their hybrid physiology allowed them to work tirelessly, coordinating efforts between the diverse teams. However, as the facility began to take shape, an unexpected challenge arose. The native flora of Harmony started to react aggressively to the presence of off-world technology. Vines and roots grew at an alarming rate, threatening to engulf the construction sites. This is unprecedented, a human botanist exclaimed, examining a rapidly growing plant. The vegetation seems to be responding to our equipment's energy signatures. Xena knelt beside a writhing mass of vines, her biosuit interfacing with the plant life. It's not just responding, she said, her eyes wide. It's adapting, evolving to protect itself. Anthony joined her, placing his hand on a nearby tree. Through their shared connection, they began to understand the complex relationship between Harmony's ecosystem and the imported technology. We need to find a way to harmonize our presence with the planet's natural systems, Anthony mused. Xena, what if we... The couple worked tirelessly with the scientific team, combining their hybrid insights with the expertise of the assembled specialists. After days of intense research and experimentation, they developed a specialized biofilter that could bridge the gap between alien plant life and imported technology. As the biofilter was activated, the aggressive growth of the vegetation slowed, then stopped entirely. The plants seemed to relax, integrating seamlessly with the half-built structures. It's working, Xena breathed, watching as a vine gently curled around a power conduit without disrupting its function. With the vegetation issue commitment, construction of the Harmony Research Facility progressed rapidly. The compound took shape as a marvel of integrated technology, its organic curves blending seamlessly with the surrounding landscape. As the project neared completion, a Xinti delegation arrived on Harmony. Leading them was Solara, a female Xinti scientist whose presence marked a significant shift in their traditionally male-dominated society. Solara approached Anthony and Xena, her eyes gleaming with curiosity. Your achievements here are remarkable, she said, her voice a low purr. I am particularly interested in how your hybrid physiology has contributed to these innovations. The couple welcomed Solara warmly, sensing her genuine interest and open-mindedness. As they gave her a tour of the facility, they discussed the potential applications of hybrid technology across various fields. The possibilities are endless, Anthony explained, gesturing to a prototype ship docked in the facility's hangar. This vessel incorporates the best elements of human, Vidian, and Kzinti technology, enhanced by insights from our hybrid physiology. Solara's ears perked up with interest. Fascinating. I look forward to studying this further. As the grand opening of the Harmony Research Facility approached, dignitaries from all three species began to arrive. Admiral Winters, Razorclaw, and high-ranking Vidian officials gathered in the main atrium, marveling at the seamless integration of technologies. Anthony and Xena stood at the podium, preparing to unveil the prototype ship. The air buzzed with excitement and anticipation. "Today marks a new era of cooperation," Anthony began, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd. "What we've achieved here on Harmony is just the beginning." As Xena activated the holographic display to showcase the prototype ship, a sudden power surge rippled through the facility. The lights flickered, and the security systems momentarily faltered. In that instant of vulnerability, chaos erupted. A group of armed individuals, a mix of humans, Vidians, and Xinti, burst into the atrium. Their leader, a scarred human, raised a weapon. "Death to the hybrid abominations," he shouted. "We will not allow our species to be corrupted." Anthony and Xena's biosuits pulsed with energy as they sprang into action. The battle for Harmony had begun, and the future of interspecies cooperation hung in the balance. Balance. Anthony and Xena moved in perfect sync, their biosuits pulsing with energy as they engaged the attackers. The hybrid couple's enhanced reflexes and strength quickly turned the tide of the battle. As Anthony deflected a barrage of energy blasts, Xena's fingers danced across a nearby control panel. The facility's defense systems came online, creating energy barriers to contain the threat. "We need to end this quickly," Anthony called out, dodging a wild swing from a Kzinti assailant. Xena nodded, her eyes glowing with commitment. She reached out with her mind, interfacing directly with the facility's systems. Suddenly, the lights in the atrium shifted to a calming blue hue, and a low-frequency hum filled the air. The effect was almost instantaneous. The attackers' movements became sluggish, their coordination faltering. Within moments, security teams from all three species moved in to subdue the would-be assassins. As the last of the attackers was restrained, Admiral Winters approached Anthony and Xena. "Impressive work," he said, his voice tight with concern. "But this incident proves we still have a long way to go in fostering true cooperation." Before either of them could respond, a priority alert chimed on the Admiral's communicator. He listened intently, his expression growing more serious by the second. "Change of plans," Winters announced, addressing the hybrid couple. "I need you two for an urgent mission. The Zephyrian delegation will have to wait." Anthony and Xena exchanged glances, their biosuits synchronizing in response to their shared curiosity. "What's happened, Admiral?" Anthony asked. Winters gestured for them to follow him to a more private area of the facility. Once they were alone, he explained, "We've made first contact with a new species. They call themselves the Aquilans, and they've expressed interest in joining our alliance." Xena's eyes widened. "That's incredible news, but why the urgency?" "The contact was made at one of our fringe outposts," Winters continued. "We need to move quickly to establish formal relations before any misunderstandings can occur. Your unique abilities make you the ideal candidates for this mission." Anthony nodded, understanding the implications. "When do we leave?" "Immediately," Winters replied. "Your prototype ship is being prepped as we speak. You'll be heading to the Aquilan homeworld to lead the diplomatic mission." Within the hour, Anthony and Xena found themselves aboard their newly unveiled prototype ship, leaving the Harmony Research Facility behind. As they cleared the planet's atmosphere, Anthony interfaced with the ship's systems, his biosuit adapting to enhance the connection. "Navigation data received," he announced, setting course for the Aquilan system. Xena moved to join him at the control station, her own biosuit pulsing in harmony with the ship's energy signature. "I'm optimizing our propulsion systems. We should be able to push this prototype to its limits." As they journeyed through the vast expanse of space, Anthony and Xena worked in tandem with the ship's integrated systems. Their hybrid nature allowed them to fine-tune its performance on the fly, pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible with the combined technologies. Days into their journey as they approached the outer reaches of the Aquilan system, Xena noticed something unusual on the long-range sensors. "Anthony, look at this," she called out, bringing up a holographic display. "The entire system is surrounded by some kind of energy field." Anthony studied the readouts, his brow furrowing. "It's like nothing we've ever encountered. We'll need to proceed with caution." As they drew closer to the Aquilan homeworld, The true nature of the planet revealed itself. A massive oceanic sphere hung in space, its surface dotted with what appeared to be floating cities. Incredible, Xena breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. A communication request pinged on their console. Anthony accepted it, and a holographic image materialized before them. An Aquilan female appeared, her iridescent scales shimmering even through the projection. "Greetings, representatives of the Alliance," she said, her voice melodious and clear. "I am Ambassador Naya. Welcome to Aquila Prime. Please follow the provided coordinates to our orbital docking station." As they maneuvered the prototype ship towards the designated coordinates, Anthony and Xena marveled at the engineering feat before them. The docking station was a marvel of aquatic and spacefaring technology, designed to accommodate a wide variety of vessels. Their ship glided smoothly into the docking bay, where a shimmering energy field separated the vacuum of space from the high humidity environment within. As the field enveloped their vessel, both Anthony and Xena felt their biosuits adapting to the new conditions. "Ready?" Anthony asked, reaching for Xena's hand. She nodded, giving his hand a squeeze. "Let's make history." As they stepped out of their ship, they were greeted by a delegation of Aquilans led by Ambassador Naya. In person, the Aquilans were even more striking, their bodies sleek and adapted for both aquatic and land environments, with webbed appendages and eyes that seemed to shift color with their emotions. "We are honored by your presence," Naya said, bowing slightly. "If you'll follow me, the council awaits your arrival in the undersea chamber." Anthony and Xena followed the Aquilan delegation through corridors that seemed to be made of living coral and pulsing bioluminescent organisms. As they descended into the heart of the floating city, they found themselves surrounded by water on all sides, protected by transparent barriers that offered breathtaking views of the alien ocean. The undersea chamber was a vast, spherical room at the bottom of the city. As they entered, Anthony and Xena were struck by the sight of the Aquilan Leadership Council, a diverse group of beings that seemed to represent various evolutionary paths their species had taken. "Welcome, emissaries of the Alliance," the lead counselor spoke, his voice resonating through the water-filled chamber. "We have long observed your efforts to unite diverse species. It is our hope that the Aquilans might find a place among you." As Anthony stepped forward to respond, he felt a subtle shift in his biosuit. The hybrid technology was adapting once again, attuning itself to the unique energies of this underwater world. He exchanged a quick glance with Xena, noting that she had felt it too. Their mission to forge a new alliance had begun, but little did they know that beneath the surface of this serene ocean world, ancient secrets and new challenges awaited. Challenges that would test the limits of their hybrid abilities and the strength of the very alliance they sought to expand. Expand. Their mission had only just begun. As Anthony and Xena emerged from the undersea chamber, their biosuits still humming with the residual energy of the Aquilan environment, they received an urgent transmission from Admiral Winters. "Return immediately," the Admiral's voice crackled through their communicators. "New developments require your presence at Harmony." Exchanging a glance, the couple bid a hasty farewell to Ambassador Naya and boarded their prototype ship. As they cleared Aquila Prime's atmosphere, Anthony interfaced with the ship's systems, setting a course for the Harmony Research Facility. "I wonder what's so urgent," Xena mused, her fingers dancing across the control panel, optimizing their propulsion systems for the journey ahead. Anthony shrugged, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Whatever it is, it must be significant to cut our mission short." The journey back to Alliance space was swift, their prototype ship pushing the boundaries of known technology. As they approached the Harmony system, they were greeted by an unexpected sight, a delegation of Aquilan vessels flanking their approach. "Looks like we're not the only ones invited to this party," Anthony remarked, guiding their ship towards the research facility's docking bay. Upon landing, they were immediately ushered into a high-security briefing room. Admiral Winters stood at the head of a table, his face etched with concern. Around him sat representatives from various Alliance species, including a group of Aquilans. "Anthony, Xena," Winters nodded in greeting. "I apologize for the abrupt recall, but we have a situation." The Admiral activated a holographic display, showing a swirling mass of energy at the edge of Alliance space. Our long-range sensors detected this anomaly 3 hours ago. It matches no known alliance or Aquilin technology. An Aquilin scientist, her scales shimmering under the room's lights, spoke up. The energy signature bears similarities to ancient legends of the Void Dwellers. A ripple of unease passed through the room. Anthony and Xena exchanged worried glances, their biosuits pulsing in response to their heightened emotions. We need you to investigate, Winters continued, his gaze fixed on the hybrid couple. Your unique abilities and the advanced technology of your prototype ship make you our best option for this mission. Without hesitation, Anthony nodded. We're ready, Admiral. Within the hour, Anthony and Xena were back aboard their ship, accompanied by a small team of Alliance and Aquilin specialists. As they approached the coordinates of the anomaly, the ship's sensors began to behave erratically. Energy levels are off the charts, one of the Aquilin scientists reported, her webbed hands flying over the control panel. Suddenly, a massive translucent vessel phased into view before them. Its design was entirely alien, its hull seeming to shift and warp as they watched. By the stars, Xena breathed, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Before anyone could react, a strange energy field enveloped their ship. Alarms blared as systems began to fail, plunging the interior into darkness. Brace for impact, Anthony shouted, gripping the control panel. For a moment there was nothing but silence and darkness. Then with a sudden lurch, power returned to the ship. The view screen flickered to life, revealing an unfamiliar starscape. Where are we? One of the Alliance specialists asked, his voice trembling. Anthony quickly ran a sensor sweep, his face paling as he read the results. We're nowhere I recognize. We've been transported far from the Harmony system. As the reality of their situation sank in, Xena spotted something on the long-range scanners. There's a planet nearby with Earth-like conditions, she reported. It might be our best chance to regroup and make repairs. With limited options and resources dwindling, Anthony set a course for the mysterious planet. As they entered its atmosphere, they were struck by its beauty. Lush forests and gleaming bodies of water covered its surface. They landed in a clearing, the ship's systems groaning from the strain of their unexpected journey. As Anthony and Xena stepped out to survey their surroundings, they were met with an astonishing sight. Emerging from the tree line were humanoid figures with skin that glowed with bioluminescent patterns. They approached cautiously, their eyes wide with curiosity. Anthony and Xena's biosuits began to pulse rhythmically, responding to the presence of these strange beings. To their surprise, they found they could sense the aliens' emotions, a mixture of wonder and wariness. Using their newfound empathic connection, Anthony attempted to communicate. We come in peace, he projected, accompanying the thought with calming emotions. One of the aliens stepped forward, its skin glowing brighter. In their minds, Anthony and Xena heard a response. Welcome, travelers. We are the Lumina. As the Lumina drew closer, Anthony and Xena realized they had stumbled upon something far greater than they could have imagined. Their mission to investigate an anomaly had led them to a hidden world and a new alien species, one that might hold the key to confronting the looming threat of the Void Dwellers. The hybrid couple exchanged a determined look. Their journey was far from finished. In fact, it seemed a new chapter was just beginning. The Lumina's glowing forms surrounded Anthony and Xena, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing with curiosity and excitement. We must return to our people, Anthony communicated telepathically to the Lumina. Will you join us? The lead Lumina, whose patterns shimmered with authority, responded in kind. We will accompany you. Our knowledge may aid in confronting the Void Dwellers. With their new allies on board, Anthony and Xena prepared the prototype ship for the journey back to Alliance space. As they engaged the subspace drive, the ship's hull vibrated with energy. Entering subspace in 3, 2, 1, Xena announced, her fingers dancing across the control panel. The stars outside the view screen elongated into streaks of light as the ship plunged into the swirling depths of subspace. For several minutes, their journey progressed smoothly. Then, without warning, the ship lurched violently. We're experiencing extreme turbulence, Anthony shouted, gripping the controls tightly. Warning lights flashed across the console as the ship's systems struggled to maintain stability. Xena's hands flew over the controls, attempting to compensate for the sudden disruption. I can't stabilize our trajectory. As the ship spun out of control, Anthony and Xena's biosuits began to pulse with an intense energy. Without conscious thought, their bodies reacted to the danger. A shimmering field of energy expanded from their suits, enveloping the entire ship. The Lumina watched in awe as the hybrid couple's abilities manifested. The chaotic swirls of subspace outside the ship suddenly calmed, and the violent shaking ceased. What? What just happened? Anthony asked, looking at his hands in disbelief. Xena checked the ship's readings. We've stabilized. The subspace field around us, it's coming from us, Anthony. As they emerged from subspace near the Harmony Research Facility, a fleet of Alliance vessels quickly surrounded them. The prototype ship's communication system crackled to life. Unidentified vessel, this is Admiral Winters. You are ordered to power down and prepare for boarding. Anthony opened a channel. Admiral, this is Anthony. We've returned with vital information and guess. Minutes later, Admiral Winters strode into the prototype ship's airlock, his face a mixture of relief and concern. His eyes widened at the sight of the luminous aliens. By the stars, what have you two gotten yourselves into? He muttered. Anthony stepped forward. Admiral, we have a lot to report. The situation with the Void Dwellers is more complex than we imagined. Winters nodded grimly. We'll debrief immediately. But first, you two are heading to medical for a full examination. Your unauthorized absence has caused quite a stir. In the research facility's medical bay, Dr. Alara and Dr. Novak hovered over Anthony and Xena, their expressions a mix of fascination and concern. Your biosuits, Dr. Alara began, studying a holographic display of their bodies, they've become even more integrated with your physiology. The subspace exposure seems to have accelerated the hybridization process. Dr. Novak nodded in agreement. Your ability to manipulate subspace energies has increased exponentially. We'll need to run more tests to fully understand the extent of these changes. As the medical team continued their examination, Admiral Winters organized an emergency meeting of the Alliance Leadership Council. Representatives from various species filed into the secure chamber, their faces grave. Anthony and Xena stood before the council, recounting their encounter with the Lumina and the looming threat of the Void Dwellers. As they spoke, long-range sensors detected multiple anomalies approaching Alliance space. We don't have much time, Anthony concluded, but we may have a solution. Xena stepped forward. Our enhanced abilities might allow us to create a large-scale subspace field around key Alliance installations. It could effectively hide us from the Void Dwellers. The council chamber erupted in heated debate. Some leaders saw the potential for protection, while others feared the unknown consequences of such widespread subspace manipulation. As the argument raged on, Anthony and Xena exchanged a glance. Without a word, they understood what needed to be done. They slipped out of the chamber and made their way to a nearby testing facility. Working alongside the Lumina representatives, they began to push the limits of their new abilities. In a specially designed chamber, they focused their energies, attempting to create a stable subspace field. The air around them shimmered and warped. Suddenly, a pocket of space within the chamber seemed to fold in on itself, creating a hidden realm within the facility. Did we just... Anthony began, his voice filled with awe. Xena nodded, her eyes wide. We created a stable subspace pocket in normal space. The implications of this... Before they could fully process their achievement, alarms blared throughout the facility. Admiral Winters' voice came over the intercom system. All personnel to battle stations. Void Dweller vessels have entered the system. This is not a drill. Anthony and Xena rushed to the command center, their minds racing with possibilities. As they entered, they saw the grim faces of the Alliance leaders staring at tactical displays showing the approaching threat. We need to implement the subspace shielding now, Anthony declared, his voice firm with perseverance. Admiral Winters turned to face them, his expression unreadable. The Council has approved a limited implementation of your plan. You'll focus on protecting our key military installations and research facilities. Xena nodded. We'll need a team, a joint task force of Alliance and Lumina experts. Granted, Winters replied. You two will lead it. Now get to work. We don't have much time. As Anthony and Xena began assembling their team, they felt the weight of responsibility settling on their shoulders. The fate of the Alliance now rested in their hands, their evolving abilities the key to survival against an enemy beyond their comprehension. The prototype ship's engines hummed to life as they prepared to deploy the first subspace shield. Anthony and Xena exchanged a determined look, their biosuits pulsing in sync with each other and the ship's systems. Ready? Anthony asked, his hand hovering over the activation switch. Xena nodded, her eyes fixed on the screen showing the vast expanse of space before them. Let's do this! As they engaged the subspace drive, the stars outside began to blur. The true test of their abilities and the future of the Alliance was about to begin. The ship's systems hummed with energy as Anthony and Xena prepared to activate the subspace drive. However, before they could engage it, alarms blared throughout the vessel. Multiple contacts appearing on long-range sensors, Xena reported, her fingers flying across the control panel. It's the Void Dwellers. They've entered the system. Anthony's mind focused as he assessed the tactical display. We're out of time. We need to implement the shielding now. As they maneuvered the prototype ship towards the Harmony Research Facility, a small blip appeared on their sensors, distinct from the larger Void Dweller fleet. Anthony, look, Xena said, pointing to the screen. A scout ship separated from the main group. Their biosuits pulsed in unison, reacting to the imminent threat. Without warning, a shimmering field expanded from their suits, enveloping the entire ship. What's happening? Anthony asked, watching as the scout ship's sensors seemed to pass right through them. Xena checked the readings. Our suits. They're generating a localized subspace field. We're practically invisible to their sensors. Seizing the opportunity, Anthony piloted their vessel closer to the Void Dweller scout. As they approached, their enhanced empathic abilities kicked in, allowing them to sense the beings aboard the alien craft. I'm picking up confusion, fear, Xena said, her eyes closed in concentration. There's something else? Desperation? Anthony nodded, feeling the same emotions. Let's try to communicate. Focusing their thoughts, they projected a message of peace towards the scout ship. The response they received shook them to their core. Images flooded their minds. Countless worlds consumed by cosmic disasters, entire civilizations fleeing through rifts in space-time, and a desperate search for new homes in stable dimensions. They're refugees, Anthony gasped, reeling from the revelation. The Void Dwellers, they're not a single species. They're survivors from dying universes. Before they could process this information, their ship lurched violently. Warning lights flashed across the console as the experimental subspace drive activated on its own. I can't shut it down, Xena shouted, her hands moving frantically over the controls. Space itself seemed to tear open before them, creating a swirling vortex of energy. Their ship, along with the Void Dweller scout, was pulled into the rift. For what felt like an eternity, they tumbled through a kaleidoscope of light and color. When the chaos finally subsided, they found themselves in an unfamiliar region of space, surrounded by swirling clouds of cosmic dust and energy. Where are we? Anthony asked, scanning their new surroundings. Xena studied the sensor readings. Some kind of nebula. I'm detecting multiple pockets of stable spacetime within it. And look, the Void Dweller scout. It's drifting nearby, seems damaged. Anthony made a quick decision. We need to board that ship. If we can rescue the crew, maybe we can finally open a dialogue. They maneuvered their prototype vessel alongside the damaged scout ship. As they prepared to board, their biosuits adapted once again, creating a protective field that allowed them to safely enter the alien craft. Inside, they found an environment unlike anything they had encountered before. The corridors seemed to shift and bend, defying conventional physics. In what appeared to be the main chamber, they discovered the crew, a diverse collection of beings from various dimensions, all in a state of suspended animation. Look at this, Xena called out, activating a holographic interface. The hologram sprang to life, revealing the true nature of the Void Dweller's mission. It showed countless dying universes, the desperate evacuation of entire species, and the search for new homes in stable dimensions. "We've been looking at this all wrong," Anthony said, his voice filled with awe and regret. "They're not invaders. They're survivors." As they absorbed this newfound understanding, alarms began to blare throughout the Void Dweller ship. "Energy buildup in the core," Xena reported, her eyes wide. "It's going to self-destruct." They rushed back to their ship, managing to bring several of the suspended Void Dwellers with them. Moments after they disengaged from the scout ship, it exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The explosion triggered a chain reaction within the nebula. Pockets of space-time began to collapse around them. "Hold on!" Anthony shouted, gripping the controls. Their biosuits pulsed with energy as they navigated through the chaos. Together, they manipulated subspace with unprecedented precision, creating temporary bubbles of protection as they weaved through the collapsing nebula. As they emerged from the other side, they found themselves in a familiar solar system. Earth loomed before them, but something was off. "Anthony," Xena said, her voice trembling slightly, "according to these readings, we've traveled through time. Years have passed since we left." They exchanged a look of persistence as they prepared to make contact with Alliance Command. The information they carried and the Void Dweller refugees they had rescued could change everything. As they entered Earth's atmosphere, Anthony and Xena knew that their journey was a long way to go. The alliance they once knew had undoubtedly changed, and the threat of the Void Dwellers had likely evolved in unexpected ways. But now, armed with the truth about the nature of their supposed enemies, they had a chance to forge a new path, one of understanding, cooperation, and perhaps even peaceful coexistence. The prototype ship descended toward the sprawling Alliance headquarters, its hull still humming with residual subspace energy. Anthony and Xena braced themselves for what lay ahead, ready to face the challenges of this new era and reshape humanity's understanding of the cosmos. Cosmic Realm. As they breached the atmosphere, Anthony's hands tightened on the controls, his eyes scanning the familiar yet changed landscape below. "We need to stay off the radar," Xena said, her fingers dancing across the console. "Activating cloaking device." A shimmering field enveloped their vessel, rendering it invisible to Earth's defense systems. Anthony guided the ship towards a densely forested area outside a major city, setting it down gently in a small clearing. "Let's secure the ship and check on our guests," Anthony suggested, unbuckling his harness. They moved to the cargo hold where several stasis pods hummed quietly. Inside each, a Void Dweller refugee lay suspended in time, unaware of the journey they had taken. Xena ran a quick diagnostic. "Stasis fields are stable. They should be fine here for now." Anthony nodded, his mind already racing with their next steps. "We need intel. The world's changed, and we need to know how much." Their biosuits rippled and shifted, transforming into inconspicuous civilian clothing. As they stepped out of the ship, Anthony activated additional camouflage measures, ensuring their vessel remained hidden. The couple made their way through the forest, emerging on the outskirts of a small town. Streets bustled with a mix of humans and aliens, a visible sign of the Alliance's expansion. "There," Xena pointed to a public information center. "We can access the net from there." Inside, they found a row of terminals. Anthony placed his hand on the screen, his biosuit interfacing with the system to bypass any security measures. Information flooded the display. 5 years, Xena whispered, her eyes widening as she absorbed the data. "We've been gone for 5 years." Anthony's face hardened as he read about the intensified Void Dweller attacks, the formation of the Interstellar Defense Force, and the inclusion of new species in the Alliance. "Zephyrians and some Void Dweller defectors," he noted. "Things have gotten complicated." Xena's attention focused on a familiar name. "Anthony, look. Admiral Winters. She's been promoted to Supreme Commander of the IDF. She's our best shot at getting this information to the right people," Anthony decided. "We need to contact her directly." Using their enhanced abilities, they composed an encrypted message to Admiral Winters, requesting a secret meeting. As the message transmitted, Anthony felt a twinge of anxiety. How would their old commander react to their sudden reappearance? While awaiting a response, they decided to scout the area. Their path led them to the outskirts of the Harmony Research Facility, now a sprawling complex of shimmering buildings and energy fields. They've integrated Lumina Tech, Xena observed, her biosuit detecting familiar energy signatures. And Aquilin aquaforming. They've been busy. As dusk fell, a coded message blinked on their internal displays. Admiral Winters had agreed to meet them at a remote outpost in the nearby mountains. They trekked through the rugged terrain, their biosuits adapting to the harsh environment. The outpost loomed ahead, a mix of Terran and alien architecture blending into the mountainside. Guards, human, Lumina, and other species Anthony didn't recognize stood at attention as they approached. Admiral Winters emerged from the entrance, her once familiar form now augmented with gleaming cybernetics. Anthony, Xena. Her voice was cool, professional. Follow me. Inside a shielded conference room, they recounted their discoveries about the Void Dweller's true nature and their experiences in the nebula. Winter's cybernetic eye whirred as she processed the information. This could change everything. If what you're saying is true. Alarms blared, cutting her off. Security feeds flickered to life, showing a Void Dweller strike force closing in fast. How did they find us? Anthony asked, tensing for action. Your biosuits, Winters realized. They must have detected the energy signature. Anthony and Xena exchanged a look, ready to defend the outpost, but Winters shook her head. You need to leave, now. What you've brought back it's too valuable to risk here. She quickly transmitted coordinates to a hidden IDF base. Go there. It's equipped to house your refugees safely. We'll continue this discussion once you're secure. Explosions rocked the outpost. Anthony and Xena hesitated, torn between staying to help and safeguarding their vital information. Go, Winters ordered, drawing her weapon. That's an order, soldiers. They raced through the chaos, their biosuits enhancing their speed and reflexes. Void Dweller energy blasts sizzled past them as they navigated the treacherous mountain paths back to their ship. There, Xena pointed as their cloaked vessel came into view. They sprinted aboard, Anthony's hands flying over the controls. The ship hummed to life, lifting off as the battle raged behind them. As they climbed through the atmosphere, Anthony set a course for the coordinates Winters had provided. Earth grew smaller below them, the conflict they'd left behind a stark reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. You okay? Anthony asked, glancing at Xena. She nodded, her eyes fixed on the stars ahead. We made it back, but everything's changed. We have a lot of work to do. The ship's engines thrummed as they prepared for the jump to their new destination. Whatever awaited them at the hidden IDF base, Anthony and Xena knew their return had set in motion events that could reshape the future of the Alliance, and perhaps bring an end to the war with the Void Dwellers. As the stars blurred around them, Anthony reached out, taking Xena's hand in his own. Together, they plunged into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Anthony tightened his grip on the controls, guiding their ship through the dense asteroid field that surrounded their destination. The planetoid that housed the hidden Interstellar Defense Force base loomed before them, its surface pockmarked and unremarkable. Approaching IDF Base Omega, Xena announced, her eyes fixed on the sensor readings. Transmitting clearance codes now. A crackling voice came through the comm system. Unidentified vessel, you are clear to proceed. Follow the guidance beacon to Hangar 7. As they neared the planetoid's surface, a section of rocky terrain shimmered and vanished, revealing a concealed entrance. Anthony deftly maneuvered their ship into the opening, descending into a vast underground hangar. The moment they touched down, a flurry of activity erupted around them. IDF personnel in sleek uniforms rushed forward, surrounding the ship with a mix of scientific equipment and security measures. Anthony and Xena exchanged a quick glance before disembarking. A tall, stern-faced man in a general's uniform approached them, flanked by a team of scientists and security officers. Welcome to Base Omega, he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. I'm General Ethan Blackwood. We've been expecting you. Xena stepped forward. Sir, we have Void Dweller refugees in stasis aboard our ship. They require immediate attention. Blackwood nodded, gesturing to the nearby science team. We're prepared for that. Let's get them transferred to our containment area. For the next hour, Anthony and Xena oversaw the careful extraction of the stasis pods from their ship. The IDF scientists handled the alien technology with a mix of caution and fascination, their movements precise and well-rehearsed. Once the refugees were secured, General Blackwood led Anthony and Xena through a series of winding corridors to a high-security briefing room. The walls were lined with hollow displays showing various star systems and tactical readouts. "I'll be frank," Blackwood began, activating a large central display. "The war hasn't been going well. The Void Dwellers have been adapting to our strategies faster than we can develop new ones." The display flickered to life, showing a series of devastating battles across Alliance space. Anthony felt a pang of guilt at the sight of the destruction they had missed during their absence. "However," Blackwood continued, his tone shifting, "your return and the information you've brought might change everything. We've been working on something that could turn the tide." With a wave of his hand, the general brought up a schematic of a complex device. "This is the dimensional stabilizer. It's designed to create stable pockets of space-time, potentially large enough to house displaced Void Dwellers." Xena leaned in, studying the design. "It's similar to how our biosuits manipulate subspace." Blackwood nodded. "Exactly. But we've hit a roadblock. The subspace interactions are too unpredictable for our current technology to handle." Anthony and Xena shared a look of understanding. "We might be able to help with that," Anthony offered. Over the next few days, the couple worked tirelessly with the IDF science team. Their biosuits hummed with energy as they demonstrated controlled subspace manipulation, pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible. In one particularly intense session, Anthony found himself surrounded by a swirling vortex of subspace energy. He could feel the strain on his hybrid physiology as he fought to maintain control. "Anthony!" Xena's voice cut through his concentration. "You're approaching critical levels. Pull back." With a grunt of effort, Anthony reined in the energy, collapsing to his knees as the vortex dissipated. Xena was at his side in an instant, her hands glowing as she channeled stabilizing energy into his biosuit. "Thanks," he breathed, looking up at her with a mixture of exhaustion and affection. As they worked, the bond between them deepened, their synchronized movements becoming more fluid and instinctive. The IDF scientists watched in awe as the couple manipulated subspace with a grace and precision they had never seen before. On the fourth day of their research, alarms blared throughout the base. General Blackwood burst into the lab, his face grim. "We've just received word from Admiral Winters," he announced. "The Void Dwellers have launched a major offensive against key Alliance worlds. They're using tactics we've never seen before." Anthony straightened, his fatigue forgotten. "The dimensional stabilizer?" Blackwood nodded. "Winters has ordered its immediate activation. I know it's not fully tested, but we're out of options." Xena stepped forward, her eyes blazing with grit. "We'll pilot the mission." Within hours, Anthony and Xena found themselves aboard a specially modified ship, the prototype dimensional stabilizer humming ominously in the cargo hold. As they prepared for departure, General Blackwood's voice came through the comm. "Remember, the success of this mission could determine the outcome of the war. Good luck and Godspeed." The ship rocketed out of the concealed hangar, quickly leaving the asteroid field behind. Anthony plotted a course for the nearest besieged world, his hands steady on the controls despite the weight of their mission. As they dropped out of FTL near their target, the scene that greeted them was one of chaos and destruction. A massive Void Dweller fleet surrounded the planet, their energy weapons flashing in the darkness of space. "This is it," Xena said, her voice quiet but firm. "Let's give these refugees a new home." Anthony nodded, activating the dimensional stabilizer. The device thrummed to life, its energy output quickly building to unprecedented levels. Combining its effects with their own abilities, Anthony and Xena began to generate a large-scale subspace field. The fabric of space-time rippled and warped around them as the field expanded, enveloping a portion of the Void Dweller fleet. For a moment it seemed like they had succeeded. Then, without warning, alarms blared throughout their ship. The dimensional stabilizer was overloading, its energy output spiraling out of control. "We need to stabilize it manually," Xena shouted over the din. Without hesitation, Anthony and Xena rushed to don their space-worthy biosuits. As they prepared to exit the ship, they shared a look that spoke volumes. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The airlock hissed open, and they plunged into the chaotic maelstrom between normal space and the forming subspace pocket. Energy crackled around them, threatening to tear them apart. Working in perfect synchronization, Anthony and Xena began to channel massive amounts of energy through their biosuits. The strain was immense, pushing their hybrid physiology to its absolute limits. As they struggled to contain the expanding rift, they watched Void Dweller ships being drawn into the new dimension. Debris from the ongoing battle swirled around them, adding to the danger of their precarious position. Just when it seemed they might lose control, Anthony felt a surge of energy from Xena. Their biosuits pulsed in unison, their combined power finally bringing the subspace pocket under control. Exhausted but triumphant, they returned to their ship. Initial scans confirmed what they had hoped. The pocket dimension was stable and habitable, with conditions matching those described by the rescued Void Dwellers. As the remaining Void Dweller ships began to retreat, Anthony and Xena's comm system crackled to life. Admiral Winter's voice came through, tense but filled with cautious optimism. "Excellent work, you two. Dock with my flagship immediately for debriefing. We have a lot to discuss." Anthony guided their ship towards the approaching Alliance fleet, the shimmering distortion of the subspace pocket visible behind them. As they prepared to dock, he turned to Xena, taking in her weary but determined expression. "Ready for the next challenge?" he asked, a small smile playing on his lips. Xena nodded, her eyes gleaming with the same mix of exhaustion and excitement he felt. "Always." As their ship approached the flagship's docking bay, Anthony and Xena knew that their actions had opened up new possibilities for ending the conflict with the Void Dwellers, but they also recognized the immense challenges that lay ahead in implementing this solution on a larger scale. The docking clamps engaged with a resounding thud, marking the end of one mission and the beginning of another. Whatever came next, Anthony and Xena would face it together, their bond stronger than ever as they prepared to shape the future of interspecies relations. As the docking procedure completed, Anthony and Xena braced themselves for the debriefing ahead. The moment they stepped off their ship, medical personnel swarmed around them. Dr. Ilara, the flagship's chief medical officer, approached with a concerned expression. "We need to run a full diagnostic on both of you immediately," she said, ushering them towards the medical bay. The energy output from that subspace manipulation was off the charts. Anthony and Xena complied, following the doctor through the bustling corridors of the flagship. The medical bay was a marvel of technology, with holographic displays and advanced biomedical scanners lining the walls. As they lay on the examination tables, Dr. Ilara and her team began their scans. The air hummed with the sound of active sensors, and Anthony felt a tingling sensation as the scanners probed his body. "Fascinating," Dr. Ilara muttered, her eyes widening as she studied the results. "Your hybrid physiology has undergone significant changes. The biosuits, they've integrated even further into your cellular structure." Xena sat up, looking at the holographic display of her body. "What does that mean for us?" "It means," Dr. Ilara explained, "that your ability to manipulate subspace energy has been enhanced. Your bodies are adapting, evolving to handle the strain." Before they could discuss further, Admiral Winters entered the medical bay. His face was a mix of relief and urgency. "I hate to interrupt," he said, "but we need you both in the war room immediately. The Alliance leadership is assembling for an emergency meeting." Anthony and Xena exchanged glances, then nodded. They followed Admiral Winters through the ship, their newly enhanced bodies already recovering from the strain of their recent mission. The war room was filled with holographic projections of Alliance leaders from various species. Anthony recognized the reptilian features of the Vidian ambassador, the feline grace of the Xinti representative, and the shimmering form of the Lumina delegate. As they entered, all eyes turned to them. Admiral Winters cleared his throat and began the meeting. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "I present Anthony and Princess Xena, the architects of our recent breakthrough against the Void Dwellers." For the next hour, Anthony and Xena presented their findings. They explained the true nature of the Void Dwellers as dimensional refugees and outlined their plan to create multiple subspace pockets as new homes for the displaced beings. The room erupted into heated debate. The Aquilan representative, a being of water and light, spoke up first. The risks of creating artificial dimensions are immense. We could destabilize the fabric of space-time itself. But consider the alternative, the Xinti diplomat countered, her tail swishing agitatedly. Endless war, countless lives lost. This could be our best chance for peace. As the arguments flew back and forth, Anthony and Xena stood firm. They answered questions, addressed concerns, and emphasized the potential for a peaceful resolution to the conflict. Finally, after hours of intense discussion, a consensus was reached. The Alliance would move forward with a trial implementation of the plan. Admiral Winters turned to Anthony and Xena. You two will lead a specialized task force to oversee the creation of additional subspace pockets. We'll provide you with a fleet of ships equipped with improved dimensional stabilizers. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Anthony and Xena worked tirelessly, pushing their enhanced abilities to the limit as they established stable pocket dimensions throughout Alliance space. During a particularly challenging creation of a subspace pocket near a binary star system, Anthony felt the familiar surge of energy coursing through his biosuit. He reached out, sensing Xena's presence beside him. Together, they channeled the swirling vortex of subspace energy, shaping it into a stable pocket dimension. As the new realm solidified, Anthony marveled at how in sync they had become, their movements and energy manipulation perfectly coordinated. Their efforts did not go unnoticed. As news of the initiative spread, a significant faction of Void Dwellers approached the Alliance, seeking negotiations. In a cavernous meeting hall aboard a neutral space station, Anthony and Xena found themselves face-to-face with the Void Dweller delegation. The aliens' forms seemed to shift and waver, as if they existed partially out of phase with normal space-time. "We have observed your efforts," the lead Void Dweller said, its voice a harmonious blend of tones. "You offer us hope of a home after eons of wandering between dimensions?" Anthony stepped forward, his enhanced empathic abilities allowing him to sense the mixture of hope and wariness emanating from the Void Dwellers. "We seek peace," he said, "and we believe that by working together, we can find a solution that benefits all our peoples." Over the following days, Anthony and Xena led the negotiations. They facilitated cultural exchanges, sharing knowledge and building trust between the former adversaries. The talks culminated in a historic agreement. The Alliance would assist in relocating willing Void Dwellers to the newly created pocket dimensions. In exchange, the Void Dwellers would share their advanced interdimensional travel technology. As Anthony and Xena watched the Alliance and Void Dweller representatives sign the agreement, they felt a sense of accomplishment. However, their relief was short-lived. Reports began to flood in of continued attacks on Alliance worlds. A hardline faction of Void Dwellers, led by a being known as the Riftmaster, rejected the peaceful solution. In response, Anthony and Xena proposed a daring plan to confront the Riftmaster directly. They stood before the Alliance leadership, outlining their strategy to navigate the chaotic space between dimensions and neutralize the remaining threat. Admiral Winters looked at them with a mix of concern and admiration. "You understand the risks of this mission?" Anthony nodded, feeling Xena's unwavering support through their bond. "We do, Admiral, but we believe it's necessary to secure lasting peace." With reluctant approval from the Alliance leadership, Anthony and Xena began intensive training. They pushed their hybrid abilities to new limits, honing their skills in subspace manipulation and interdimensional navigation. During one grueling training session, Anthony found himself lost in a maze of shifting realities. Panic began to set in until he felt Xena's presence, guiding him back. Their enhanced bond had become a lifeline, allowing them to navigate the most chaotic of spaces together. As the day of the mission approached, Anthony and Xena made final preparations aboard their specially modified ship. The vessel hummed with advanced technology, its hull reinforced to withstand the stresses of interdimensional travel. They received a transmission from the Harmony Research Facility, where their journey had begun. Dr. Zek's holographic image appeared, his tentacles waving in concern. "Be careful out there," he said. "You two have already accomplished more than we ever dreamed possible. Come back safely." With final checks complete, Anthony and Xena prepared for departure. Through the viewport, they could see the assembled Alliance fleet, a show of support for their mission. Anthony initiated the launch sequence, feeling the ship come to life around them. As they accelerated away from the flagship, he turned to Xena. "Ready to reshape the future?" he asked, a hint of a smile on his face despite the gravity of their mission. Xena nodded, her eyes gleaming with dedication. "Always. Let's finish this." Their ship shot forward, plunging into the swirling vortex of interdimensional space. As reality warped around them, Anthony and Xena focused on their goal, finding the Riftmaster and bringing an end to the conflict once and for all. The journey through interdimensional space was unlike anything they had experienced before. Swirling energies buffeted their ship, and pockets of distorted reality threatened to tear them apart. Anthony's hands danced over the controls, making constant adjustments to keep them on course. Xena monitored the advanced sensors, her enhanced senses attuned to the slightest fluctuations in the surrounding spacetime. "Energy signature detected," she announced, her voice cutting through the chaos. "It matches Void Dweller technology." They followed the trail, navigating through treacherous dimensional rifts and narrowly avoiding collapsing pockets of reality. As they pushed deeper into uncharted territory, a massive structure loomed before them. The Riftmaster's fortress hung suspended in a bubble of stable spacetime, its architecture defying conventional physics. Angles seemed to bend in impossible ways, and energy pulsed through the structure in mesmerizing patterns. As they approached, alarms blared throughout their ship. The fortress had detected their presence, and energy readings spiked ominously. Anthony and Xena shared a look of silent communication, their empathic bond conveying volumes. They activated their biosuit's most advanced capabilities, preparing for the confrontation ahead. "Whatever happens," Anthony said, his voice steady, "we face it together." Xena nodded, her eyes reflecting the dedication they both felt. Together. With a deep breath, they guided their ship towards the imposing fortress. The Riftmaster awaited them, and the fate of multiple species and dimensions hung in the balance. As they closed in on their target, Anthony and Xena steeled themselves for the challenge ahead, ready to confront the unknown and forge a new path for peace. Interspecies relations. As their ship approached the imposing fortress, Anthony's hands tightened on the controls. Xena's eyes narrowed, her enhanced senses scanning for any sign of danger. Suddenly, a blinding flash of energy engulfed their vessel. Anthony felt a moment of weightlessness, his stomach lurching as reality seemed to twist around them. When his vision cleared, he found himself standing in a vast chamber, its walls pulsing with otherworldly energy. Beside him, Xena gasped. They were no longer in their ship, but transported directly into the heart of the Riftmaster's stronghold. Before them stood a towering figure, its form a swirling vortex of fractured reality and crackling energy. The Riftmaster's voice boomed through the chamber, a discordant symphony of tones. "Interlopers! You dare to challenge me in my own domain?" Without warning, waves of dimensional energy surged towards Anthony and Xena. The air around them seemed to ripple and tear, threatening to rip their very molecules apart. Acting on instinct, their biosuits flared to life, creating a protective bubble that deflected the initial assault. Anthony felt Xena's presence in his mind, their bond stronger than ever. They moved in perfect synchronization, weaving through the Riftmaster's attacks. Their biosuits adapted with each passing second, shifting and morphing to counter each new threat. Xena's hand shot out, manipulating the unstable spacetime around them. A bolt of the Riftmaster's own energy rebounded, striking the colossal being and causing it to falter momentarily. Anthony seized the opportunity, channeling a surge of power through his suit. The chamber warped around them, reality bending to his will. For a brief moment, they fought across multiple dimensions simultaneously, their forms blurring as they phased in and out of existence. The Riftmaster roared in frustration, its attacks growing more frenzied. Anthony and Xena found themselves on the defensive, their biosuits straining to keep up with the onslaught. "We can't keep this up forever," Xena called out, her voice tight with exertion. Anthony nodded, his mind racing. Then in a flash of shared insight, he saw their path forward. The fortress, he said, we need to use its power against him. Understanding flowed through their bond. Moving as one, Anthony and Xena began to channel the vast energies of the fortress through their biosuits. The air crackled with power, arcs of energy leaping between them and the walls. The Riftmaster's form wavered, its control over the domain weakening. "What are you doing?" it bellowed, a note of fear creeping into its multi-tone voice. Anthony gritted his teeth, feeling his body strain under the immense power flowing through him. Beside him, Xena's form shimmered, her biosuit beginning to break down at the molecular level. "Now!" Anthony shouted, pushing his abilities to their absolute limit. Together, they focused their combined power, creating a localized subspace pocket around the Riftmaster. The pocket began to collapse, drawing in the swirling energies of the fortress and the Void Dweller leader himself. The Riftmaster thrashed wildly, its form becoming more unstable with each passing second. "No, you cannot! I am eternal!" But its protests were futile. The subspace pocket shrank rapidly, compressing the Riftmaster's essence. Anthony and Xena poured every ounce of their strength into maintaining the collapsing field, even as their biosuits deteriorated around them. With a deafening implosion and a blinding flash of light, the pocket collapsed entirely. When Anthony's vision cleared, the Riftmaster was gone. The victory was short-lived, however, as the fortress began to disintegrate around them. Reality reasserted itself violently, walls crumbling and energy fields collapsing. "We need to go," Xena said urgently, grabbing Anthony's hand. They stumbled through the crumbling fortress, their biosuits barely functional. Debris rained down around them as they navigated the twisting corridors, guided by an instinctive sense of their ship's location. Finally, they spotted their vessel through a haze of swirling energy. With a final burst of speed, they dove through the airlock just as the section of the fortress behind them imploded. Anthony's hands flew over the controls, overriding safety protocols and pushing the engines beyond their limits. The ship shot away from the dissolving pocket of space-time, reality warping around them as they escaped. As the immediate danger passed, Anthony and Xena slumped in their seats, exhausted. Their biosuits, pushed beyond their design limits, began to undergo a final transformation. Anthony watched in fascination as the advanced technology merged completely with his skin, disappearing from view but leaving him with a tingling sensation of power just beneath the surface. Xena examined her own changing form, her eyes wide with wonder. "Anthony, I think we've become something new." He nodded, feeling the ability to manipulate subspace and interdimensional energies now as natural as breathing. "We've evolved." As their ship sped towards Alliance space, Anthony and Xena marveled at their new capabilities, testing the limits of their transformed bodies. They phased through solid objects, manipulated gravity, and even created small pockets of alternate reality with mere thoughts. The long journey home gave them time to reflect on the implications of their victory and transformation. They discussed plans for the future, ideas for using their new abilities to benefit the Alliance, and the challenges they might face as the first of their kind. As they approached the outer beacons of Alliance territory, a fleet of ships appeared on their sensors. Anthony recognized the flagship at the center of the formation and opened a communication channel. Admiral Winter's face appeared on the console, his expression a mixture of relief and awe. "Anthony, Xena, you've done it. The Void Dweller threat has been neutralized across all Alliance worlds. But what happened to you two?" Anthony and Xena exchanged glances, realizing that their transformation must be visible even through the communication link. Xena spoke, her voice carrying a new resonance. "Admiral, we have much to discuss. Our victory came with unexpected changes." The Admiral nodded, his eyes wide with curiosity. "I can see that. Dock with the flagship immediately. We have much to talk about, and a galaxy eager to thank its heroes." As Anthony guided their ship toward the waiting fleet, he felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. Their ordeal with the Riftmaster was over, but a new chapter in their lives, and in the history of the Alliance, was just beginning.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.